Welcome to listening to stories on Kevin Tyne TV audiobook channel. Chapter 2267, The Immortal Clan's Downfall. 10 years, 50 years, 200 years. 200 more years went by and the immortal clans had been reduced to a state nearly unrecognizable. They were no longer the haughty, untouchable powerhouses they had once been. Now they were no different from ordinary families, shunned by the rest of the world, largely because people feared the consequences of siding with them. After all, Tian Yang targeted anyone who remained close to the immortal clans. With their power reduced to this pitiful state, Tian Yang could eradicate them whenever he wished. Yet he chose to let them linger, allowing the remnants of the immortal clans to spend their final days drowning in regret for ever offending him. As for Patriarch Gu and those directly responsible for torturing Kulas, Tian Yang showed no such mercy, and he crippled every one of them, stripping away not only their cultivation but their limbs as well. By now Tian Yang had ascended to the golden immortal realm, with Ren Xie trailing just a step behind its silver immortal. Though his time within Han Zexian's tomb had greatly accelerated his cultivation, Tian Yang's growth had slowed sharply afterward. Even after consuming countless treasures to refine his aptitude, his talent was still merely above average. Ren Xia, on the other hand, continued to advance at a remarkable pace. Her natural talent allowed her to steadily close the gap between them. The only reason Tian Yang even managed to reach the golden immortal realm was mainly due to plundering the immortal confinement dungeon after learning about its vault and finding its new location, or he would still be a silver immortal right now. That said, Tian Yang's cultivation was slightly deceiving, as he also possessed numerous powerful martial techniques that gave him a massive advantage over other cultivators, allowing him to defeat most around his cultivation with ease. Did you hear about the desolate continent? It's no longer sealed off. Ren suddenly started the conversation as they sipped tea in a private room inside a high-end restaurant. Tian Yang slowly placed down his teacup and responded, "Of course." Over the years, Kulas established his own family and empire within the desolate continent. Then, without warning, he sealed off the entire continent, forcing out all who were not part of the giant race, a race he had personally created. Those who dared to resist were killed on sight. Because of this, Tian Yang could no longer watch over him. However, since only Kulas and his family would exist on the continent, he wasn't too worried. That said, he was curious about the reason behind the sudden seclusion. It had been over 100 years since then, and just as abruptly as the desolate continent had been sealed, it was now being reopened to the public for reasons unknown. Now that the immortal clans are no longer an issue, do you plan on visiting him? Ren Xia asked. Tian Yang took a moment to respond. I'm not sure. It's been almost half a millennium since we last met. I wouldn't be surprised if he has forgotten about me. Are you really saying that after all this time? But if you're truly curious whether he's forgotten you or not, go see him. Tian Yang raised his teacup and sipped on it before responding. I guess so. It's not like we have anything else to do at this moment. Since achieving their goal of bringing down the immortal clans, the pair embraced a tranquil, almost retired existence together, roaming the divine heavens at leisure while steadily refining their cultivation in peace. With their next journey decided, they set off for the desolate continent, now called the Giant's Continent. Although the couple could easily fly to their destination, they decided to take the ship instead, as neither of them was in a rush to see Kulas. The journey to the Giant's Continent stirred the bitter memories Tian Yang had long buried from his first encounter with the Huang family, the true beginning of his path as a cultivator to Han Zexian's tomb, where he had first met Huang Shaoli, Kulas, and Ren Xia. Even after hundreds of years, those memories remained vivid, resurfacing as sharply as if they had happened only yesterday. What are you thinking about? Ren Xia asked Tian Yang, who had been quietly staring out the window of their deluxe room, one of the largest and most luxurious on the ship ever since they set sail. I never told you about my first journey to the desolate continent, did I? Tian Yang muttered, his voice tinged with distant nostalgia. You've told me many things about yourself, but you have always avoided talking about the desolate continent. Tian Yang looked at her with a warm smile. Are you willing to hear about it now? She quietly nodded. Without further ado, Tian Yang began recalling his story to Ren Xia from his first meeting with Huang Zhaoli, his first love, to their meeting. After listening to Tian Yang's story, Ren Xia finally understood the depth of his hatred toward the immortal clans, something he had never spoken of outright. His story not only revealed the reason behind his relentless pursuit of them, but also the exact moment Tian Yang had become the man he was today, the man she loved. It was a tragic story, yet Ren Xia couldn't help feeling grateful for the path it had carved. Had even a single detail of the past shifted, she might never have crossed paths with Tian Yang, condemned to remain nothing more than a tool of her family. Perhaps the real reason why I refused to visit Kulis before wasn't because I didn't want to disturb Kulis's peace, but because I was simply not ready to return to the desolate continent. Tian Yang sighed. Well, how are you feeling now? Ren Xia asked. Tian Yang looked at her with a gentle smile. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here right now. Ren Xia's eyes widened, delight shimmering within them. Saying nothing, she took his hand and pulled him to the bed, where they passionately embraced until the ship arrived at its destination. Chapter 2268, The Real Giant's Continent. Attention, esteemed passengers. We will be arriving at our destination, the desolate continent, now known as the Giant's Continent, shortly. Please prepare to deboard. The captain's voice resounded through the speakers. Looks like we didn't get attacked by sea beasts this time. Tian Yang thought as he calmly gazed toward the horizon, where a vast stretch of land slowly came into view, growing clearer and larger with every passing moment. Half an hour later, the captain's voice returned. We've arrived at our destination. Thank you all for boarding with the Purple Lion today. If you wish to return home, there will be another ship arriving in 2 weeks. After disembarking the ship, Tian Yang and Ren Xia immediately began wandering the continent to see if anything had changed. Wow, they really remodeled this entire place, didn't they? Ren Xia remarked after scattering her divine sense and seeing the changes. When they had last visited during the exploration of Han Zexian's tomb, the only paths on this continent were the ones carved naturally over countless years of wear. But now proper roads stretched before them, broad, structured, and astonishingly massive in width, almost as if they were made for large beasts rather than humans. The cities had changed just as dramatically as the roads completely transformed and expanded several-fold. Even the smallest buildings now stood tall and imposing, while the largest structures soared so high they seemed to pierce the clouds. And it wasn't only the roads and buildings that had changed. The entire continent itself had grown to an immense scale, so vast that humans wandering upon it were reduced to the size of ants in comparison. As for the dwellers on this continent, everyone from the giant's race was at least 3 times larger than an adult human. Setting aside their brief encounter with Kulas in the immortal confinement dungeon, this was Tian Yang and Ren Xia's first true sighting of the giant race, despite the race having existed for over a century. The giants never stepped beyond the borders of their continent, so seeing one was only possible here. Just how did they grow so massive? Did Kulas teach everyone the great mammoth body refinement technique? Ren Xia wondered out loud after seeing the giants. Tian Yang replied, The great mammoth body refinement technique isn't something anyone can learn. Even if Kulas passed the technique to everyone in the giants' race, only a few of them would be able to achieve such a level of mastery, not to mention the extreme cultivation method it demanded. Then how do you explain the giants' race? Don't tell me they're all Kulas' children. We'll find out if we ask him. The two entered the nearest city to ask for directions. Hey, do you know where I can meet the great mammoth? Tian Yang approached a passing giant and asked, Great mammoth? You mean His Majesty? Giant Emperor Kulas, the giant replied. What? Tian Yang's eyes widened at Kulas' name being spoken. Since when did Kulas stop hiding his identity? Seeing Tian Yang's puzzled face, the giant explained. Great Mammoth was the giant emperor's warrior name. He now goes by his true name. Did he stop hiding because he's aware of the immortal clan's downfall? Ren Sha spoke to Tian Yang using voice transmission, or he's now powerful enough that the immortal clans no longer scare him, he said. Anyway, why are you looking for the giant emperor? He's not someone you can meet just because you want to. The giant suddenly asked. We're his acquaintances, said Tian Yang. Although he could have claimed to be friends with Kulis, nobody would believe him, so he went for the most believable choice. The giant narrowed his eyes and gave them a suspicious look. What's your name? He then asked. Tian Yang didn't hesitate to give his real name. Tian Yang, the giant's eyes widened with surprise. You're Tian Yang, really? He exclaimed. Tian Yang raised his eyebrows and asked, You know me? Of course, he nodded. There is nobody among the giant's race who doesn't know your name since Giant Emperor Kulis told us to be on the lookout for you. So he's expecting me? Tian Yang muttered. Sure is, the giant emperor said to send you his way the moment we see you. The giant wasted no time, pointing in a specific direction and said, You can find the giant emperor at the colossal mammoth city. When you meet him, please tell him that it was I, Karan, who sent you his way. All right, Tian Yang nodded, looking somewhat speechless. By the way, are you Kulis' children? Ren Xia suddenly asked. Huh? Who are you? She pointed at Tian Yang and said, His wife. Ah, then you must be Ren Xia. You also know me. It was Ren Xia's turn to be surprised. Yes, Karan nodded before continuing. And to answer your question, every giant is the giant emperor's children in a way, since we have all received his family's blood. However, only those who possess the mammoth bloodline are considered his true descendants. So he didn't teach you the great mammoth body refinement technique, Ren Xia continued to ask. What? There's no way that would happen, Karan responded with a surprised expression. Only his true descendants would have such a privilege. However, we've all been blessed with a body refinement technique by the giant emperor. Why are you asking these questions? Just curious. Well, if you want to know more, please meet the giant emperor. He's been waiting for your arrival for many years now. Now, if you'll excuse me, Karan gave them a polite bow before resuming his day. Tian Yang and Ren Xia didn't linger in the city and left shortly after. So they never learned the great mammoth body refinement technique from Kulis, but they did receive his blood. Does this mean his blood is the secret behind the giant's race? This is getting more and more interesting, Ren Xia wondered out loud as they made their way to the colossal mammoth city, Chapter 2269, verifying his identity. Chapter 2269, verifying his identity. As Tian Yang and Ren Xia made their way to the colossal mammoth city, they encountered several magical beasts that only existed within Giant's continent. Not only were they as massive as giants, but they also possessed overwhelming strength that far exceeded their cultivation level. For instance, a magical beast at the first level of Divine Emperor displayed combat prowess comparable to a divine ancestor, which was an entire realm higher. Moreover, magical beasts were naturally stronger than cultivators of the same realm, and when compared to humans, the gap became even more immense. Good heavens, I have never seen beasts this massive before. Ren Xia remarked after slaying a giant bird that was nearly 300 meters long. You think they also absorbed some of Kulis' blood? She looked at Tian Yang and asked. I cannot fathom why Kulis would feel his blood to these beasts, he said while shaking his head. Ren Xia thought for a moment before speaking. I've heard the giant race possesses immense strength far beyond that of humans. Even an ordinary giant who has never trained could give a seasoned body refiner a difficult fight. Perhaps the beasts on this continent were too weak before, so Kulis strengthened them. That's actually very logical. Tian Yang agreed with her reasoning. However, can his blood even do something like this? He then questioned. Isn't that what the great mammoth body refinement technique does? It turns him into a giant, Ren Xia asked. No, it doesn't automatically make them big, but it allows the person who learned it the ability to transform their size at will. I also learned the great mammoth body refinement, you know? While I am nowhere near Kula's level, I'm able to make myself bigger if I want to. What? This is the first time I'm hearing about this, Ren Xia exclaimed, her eyes shimmering with excitement. If you can adjust your body size at will, does that mean you can also adjust the size of your that? Ren Xia asked, her gaze lowering to the sword between his legs. What kind of question is that? Tian Yang frowned, looking slightly offended. Ren Xia chuckled. I'm not trying to say that I'm not satisfied with your current size, if that's what you are worried about. I'm just curious. Tian Yang sighed. How the hell am I supposed to know? I never tried. He lowered his head to look at his manhood and silently tried using the great mammoth body refinement on it. Did it work? Ren Xia asked with a slight smile. Who knows? Without answering her, Tian Yang continued flying to the colossal mammoth city. Wait, you can't leave me hanging like this, Ren Xia cried out loud. As she chased after him, over the next several days, Ren Xia continued to pester Tian Yang for an answer. However, he ignored her. Eventually, they reached their destination. So this is the colossal mammoth city. It's even larger than I imagined, and I was being quite generous with my guesses, Ren Xia remarked as they hovered before the magnificent city. Although the city was far larger and more extravagant than the others, what truly set it apart was the majestic castle dominating half its area. The structure was so immense that not even a row of a dozen towering mountains could cover its length from end to end. I guess we should head straight for the castle, Tian Yang said. However, right as they got close to the castle, several giants appeared before them, blocking their path. Humans are not allowed beyond this point, said one of them. My name is Tian Yang, and I am here to meet Giant Emperor Kulas. Tian Yang, are you sure? Yes, I am sure. After a moment of silence, one of them spoke. Follow us. Tian Yang and Ren Xia followed these giants, but they were not led into the castle. Instead, they were brought to a building outside the castle. Where is this? The interrogation room. Someone will be here shortly to verify your identity. Is that so? Tian Yang and Ren Xia sat calmly in the same chair, which was massive enough to seat several people with ease. Some time later, a beautiful woman with golden hair and emerald eyes stepped into the building. Though her aura unmistakably belonged to a giant, her body was no larger than that of an ordinary human. Taking a seat across from them, she asked, Are you the one who claims to be Tian Yang? Indeed. Then I'll be asking you several questions now. If you fail even a single one, you'll be executed for daring to trick us, she said. Without giving them a chance to respond, the woman began asking her questions. How did you first meet the giant emperor? Tian Yang calmly responded, I was on the verge of death when he showed up and saved me with some medicine. The woman immediately wrote down his answer on a large piece of paper. What were the treasures the giant emperor gave you within the Han Zexian's tomb? Tian Yang raised an eyebrow and said, That happened several hundred years ago, so give me a moment to think. He closed his eyes and recalled all of the treasures he'd received from Kulas, who acquired them from the trials he completed. How many exchanges did the giant emperor have with a certain individual surnamed Gu? The hell? How am I supposed to know that when I was busy dealing with the other guy? I doubt even Kulas himself knows the answer. The woman didn't say anything and only wrote down his answer. When was the last time you met the giant emperor? She then asked. At the immortal confinement dungeon. I'm still waiting for a thank you from him, by the way. Several more questions later, the woman stood up and said, I am done here. I'll return once I verify your identity. Without elaborating, she left the building more in time said 9 CFF QJ A6P9IM to my chapter 270, Tian Yang's reunion with Kulas. After she left, the blonde woman entered the palace. Some time later, she stood before a lone colossal silhouette sitting on a grand throne at the end of the room. I have returned, father. The woman bowed to him. How did that man who claims to be Tian Yang look to you? The silhouette asked. Well, I've never met him before, so I can't really say whether he's real or not. However, he answered the questions quite calmly. She said, the silhouette extended his massive arm thick enough to carry mountains toward her and silently beckoned. The woman nodded and offered the piece of paper on which she had written Tian Yang's answers to him. The entire room fell dead silent as the silhouette read the answers. A moment later, the entire palace trembled as the silhouette burst out laughing. "Father?" the woman exclaimed, looking baffled. "Bring him to me," he spoke in a demanding and urgent voice, refusing to elaborate further. "Yes," the woman said before, hastily leaving. Meanwhile, as Tian Yang and Ren Xie waited for the woman's return, the ground suddenly trembled beneath them, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone laughing. "What a powerful presence," Ren Xie remarked, feeling the energy that rippled through the air with that laughter. "It must be Kulas." "I guess he'd just received my answers," said Tian Yang. Minutes later, the woman returned. "Come with me. The giant emperor has summoned you," she said. Tian Yang and Ren Xie followed her, while a group of giant guards trailed behind them, watching their every move to ensure they didn't attempt anything suspicious. They entered the palace shortly later and continued following the woman through the massive halls as they walked. One of the guards suddenly spoke, a hint of hesitation in his voice. "Your Highness, that voice just now was that?" "Yes, it was my father. Surprising, wasn't it?" she responded, without stopping or looking back. "Yes, I have never heard His Majesty laugh in such a manner before." "Me neither." The woman turned to look at Tian Yang and continued, "Whether he's laughing because he's angry that another imposter showed up, or he's the real deal, I guess we'll find out soon enough." Tian Yang raised an eyebrow. "Do imposters show up often, claiming to be me? And how would they even know about my relationship with Kulas?" she replied. "Plenty of humans come seeking an audience with the giant emperor. Sometimes one of us accidentally mentions your name since we were all instructed to remember it, and those humans seize the chance, claiming to be you just to meet the giant emperor." "How did it end?" Ren Xie asked, curiosity in her voice. "Not well," the woman replied, "and not just for the humans who lied. The giant emperor was furious the first time it happened, and many suffered that day, giant or not. Since then, we've started requiring verification before we let anyone claiming to be Tian Yang meet the giant emperor. Eventually, they arrived at their destination. The woman knocked on the colossal doors and called out, 'Father, it's me, I've brought them.' For a brief moment, everything fell silent. Then, the doors burst open with such force that a violent gust of wind surged outward, threatening to pull everyone into the room. A voice overbearing and regal resounded the next moment. "Enter?" Yet it couldn't fully conceal the excitement simmering beneath it. Tian Yang and Ren Xie calmly moved forward, entering the dimmed room. But the moment the others tried to follow, the voice boomed with overwhelming force. "I will not allow anyone to interfere with our reunion." His overbearing voice surged past Tian Yang and Ren Xie, shoving the others back. The doors slammed shut an instant later without producing the slightest noise. Within the chamber, Tian Yang's eyes were immediately drawn to the colossal figure seated upon a grand throne. The shadows hid his face, but the sunlight illuminated the rest of him clearly. His body was titanic beyond reason, a fortress of muscle, with veins as wide as rivers coursing across his frame. After a moment of stillness, Tian Yang broke the silence first. "It doesn't feel like I'm meeting with a friend, much less a sworn brother." The colossal silhouette, which appeared as rigid and immovable as a mountain, suddenly trembled at the sound of his voice. "Oh my, how unbecoming of me. The excitement of seeing you again must have clouded my senses for a moment," the silhouette said, slowly rising from the throne. Once he stepped off the platform and into the light, Tian Yang could finally see Kulas's face again after hundreds of years. Although he had grown more mature and now sported a short beard, Tian Yang still recognized Kulas instantly before either of them could speak. Kulis' massive body began to shrink, rapidly condensing until he stood at the size of an ordinary adult human. I appreciate it. I don't think my neck could handle looking up at you for too long, Tianyang said with a smile. How could I share words with my sworn brother while looking down on him? Kulis answered, his smile matching Tianyang's. You seem to be doing well, at least much better than when I last saw you, said Tianyang. Kulis awkwardly scratched his head and said, Before I can even thank you for getting me out of that place, I must apologize to you for not recognizing you. I even attacked you. He lowered his head and apologized in a sincere tone. I'm sorry for failing to recognize you. Tianyang calmly shook his head. There's really no need to apologize. I don't even blame you. Hell, if I had been in your shoes, I would have likely not recognized me either. Kulis lifted his head and chuckled. I bet you have no idea how many times they drugged me or used illusions trying to extract information on you. A guilty expression appeared on Tianyang's face as he replied, Honestly, I should be the one apologizing if I had gone to save you sooner. Chapter 2271, Childish Feud. Saving me sooner, huh? Kulis muttered before shaking his head. Although it was quite painful and felt like an eternity at first, I quickly got used to it, the physical pain, that is. Due to the great mammoth body refinement technique you gave me, I was not only able to grow temper by physique to an extreme level, but it stopped being painful after a couple of months. As for the mental torture that took far longer to overcome, it took me years to realize that all I had to do was stop believing in what I saw. Once I did, it became much easier to endure. That said, I wasn't close to many people, if any at all, so they usually used you to torment me. If I have to be honest, I'm sort of glad that it happened. After all, if not, I wouldn't be in my current position right now. Not only have I surpassed my entire family during their peak, but I also gained a real family who wouldn't betray me over some pressure. Kulis spoke with barely a pause, hardly stopping to breathe. Speaking of my family, I've heard what you've accomplished. The downfall of the immortal clans. You've finally achieved your goal. What was once mocked as foolish and impossible you brought to reality. I wanted to help you, but doing so would have lessened your achievement. So I held back and watched from here. Hey, I have been trying my best to keep quiet so the two of you can have a moment, but you're acting like I'm not even here. I also had a hand in the immortal clan's downfall, you know? Renshe finally spoke up. Kulis shifted his gaze to her, and the instant he did, it grew noticeably colder, faint, but impossible to miss. He was clearly displeased by Renshe's presence. Why did you have to come here too? He sighed, not even bothering to hide his displeasure. Renshaya narrowed her eyes at him. I don't recall doing anything to deserve that reaction, especially since we haven't spoken since Han Zexian's tomb. Tell me, did you not mature even a little over all these years? You didn't do anything? Kulis sneered. You touched my brother with your foul hands even though I warned you not to. What are you scheming, you damn fox? Are you trying to steal his techniques? Or do you have other ulterior motives? How many men have you snared so far? This son of a bitch, can I beat some sense into him? Rensha asked Tianyang as she pulled up her sleeves. Oh, you want to fight? Bring it on. I have always wanted to punch that annoying face of yours at least once, Kulis said, raising his thick arms like a boxer. Tianyang pinched the bridge of his nose and sighed. I can't believe the two of you are still stuck in this childish feud. I was ready to be nice, Renshaya protested, but he insulted my character, implying that I am a slut even though you're the only one I've ever been with. Dear, you can vouch for me that, during our first connection, I gushed with blood after you penetrated me with your sword. Tianyang's jaw dropped at Renshaya's description. I wouldn't say it gushed with blood, but it was definitely there, he responded in an awkward tone. Wait, what the hell are you making me say? That doesn't prove anything. Kulis then said there are plenty of ways to fake something like that. I bet you do that to everyone you meet. Fuck, I've had it with this rude bastard. I'm going to beat him to death. Don't try to stop me. Renshaya's aura soared the next moment. Ha ha, beat me to death? A mere silver immortal like you. I'd love to see you try. Kulis also released his aura, revealing his cultivation to be at the true immortal level. Enough. Tian Yang suddenly roared, his voice shaking the entire room. Both Ren Xia and Kulis retrieved their aura after a brief moment of stillness. Kulis, you can trust her, Tian Yang continued as he stared Kulis in the eyes. She's been by my side ever since we rescued you, and we've fought with our lives on the line multiple times. Hell, she even saved my butt many times. If it weren't for her, neither of us would be where we are right now. After a moment of silence, Kulis burst out laughing. I guess I went out of line with my jokes. My apologies, jokes. You really expect me to believe that you were just joking around? Ren Xia frowned. Kulis shrugged and replied calmly. I'm fully aware of your relationship with Tian Yang. Every time someone mentions his name, yours follows right after. Even a blind man could see your devotion to him. I just wanted to tease you a little. Consider it repayment for all the times you annoyed me in the past. Whether you believe me or not is up to you. Let's leave it at that, Tian Yang then said. Ren Xia didn't say anything, quietly nodding her head. Let's continue our conversation elsewhere, somewhere more comfortable and accommodating, Kulis said. All right. The three of them left the room shortly after. Prepare a feast and bring our finest tea to my private dwelling, Kulis said to the guards waiting outside. Ah, as your majesty commands. The guards immediately scurried away. Does this mean, the blonde woman muttered as she stared at Tian Yang. Yes, he's the real deal. Kulis nodded. Let me introduce you to each other. Tian Yang, this is my youngest daughter, Xie Mei. Xie Mei, this is my sworn brother, Tian Yang. There's nobody I trust more than him in this world. It's an honor to meet you, senior. Xie Mei bowed hurriedly, caught off guard by Kulis's shocking remark. I figured she was your daughter when the guards addressed her as Highness, but the youngest. How many children do you have? Tian Yang looked at him with wide eyes. You curious? Then I'll introduce all of them to you later. Kulis chuckled, Chapter 2272, Heavenly Unrestricted Longevity Pill, once they arrived at their destination. Kulis turned to look at Xie Mei and commanded her, I want you to gather your siblings at the throne room and wait for my return there. All of them? She asked for clarification. All of them? As you wish, Father. After giving them a bow, she turned around and disappeared into the halls. Once they were seated, Kulis said, While we wait for the tea to arrive, why don't we start with what you were doing inside Han Zexian's legacy, shall we? However, Tian Yang shook his head and calmly refused. It's not that I don't want to tell you. I simply can't. It's for your safety. For my safety? Kulis raised an eyebrow. I am the giant emperor, you know. I appreciate the concern, but I can handle anything you throw at me. It's useless, Ren Xia interjected. I have asked many times, but he would always refuse to tell me, saying the same thing. What's so dangerous about it anyway? You're only telling us something. How could that possibly be a problem? Kulis said, looking genuinely confused. Tian Yang shook his head. Unfortunately, even I don't fully understand it. Just know this, there are still things out there far beyond our comprehension. After a brief silence, Tian Yang continued, With that being said, I can tell you some things I did inside, such as what Han Zexian left behind. Just say that from the beginning. Tian Yang smiled and began telling them about the interior layout of the cavern and the priceless stash Han Zexian left behind. Strange as it sounds, there was a tiny waterfall in that cavern, and the water wasn't water at all. It was an elixir that sharpened focus to an incredible degree. With its help, my cultivation efficiency soared. That was what truly accelerated my progress. Then there were shelves of spatial rings filled entirely with longevity pills, thousands upon thousands of them. And they were the priceless kind without a consumption limit, meaning I could take as many as I wanted and extend my lifespan endlessly. Both Ren Xia and Kulis stared at him with wide eyes filled with disbelief. I must interrupt you. Longevity pills without consumption limits and in the thousands. Kulis said, brows furrowing with doubt. That borders on impossible. Such pills are exceptionally rare and priceless. How could Han Zexian have amassed such a quantity? Tian Yang shrugged. What's the point of lying about such things? Did you consume all of them? Ren Xia asked. I consumed most of them, but I kept a few of them as a memento. Tian Yang proceeded to retrieve 2 pills and place them on the table. May I? Kulis asked, as his hands hovered over one, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. Go ahead, I kept them so I could give one to you two anyway. Ren Xia and Kulis grabbed the pill and brought it close to their eyes, inspecting it with great interest. Wow, this really is the heavenly unrestricted longevity pill, Ren Xia murmured in a daze. I've only ever seen one in my entire life, and that was back when I was still with my family, from a distance. Someone like me wasn't even allowed to touch it. They're even rarer now since they stopped appearing on the market hundreds of years ago, Kulis said. For Han Zexian to have so many, perhaps he was the creator. No one ever learned who made them in the first place. Kulis shifted his gaze to Tian Yang and spoke with a stiff smile. And you consumed thousands of them. What were you thinking? Are you not satisfied with your already near-limitless longevity as an immortal? It's related to the forbidden information, he shrugged. Anyway, besides the pills and the waterfall, there was also a cultivation bed inside. I don't know what it was made of, but it sped up my cultivation several-fold when I sat on it. I wish I could have taken it out of the cavern, but it was stuck there. That sounds like another priceless treasure, the heavenly ascension platform, to be exact, Ren Xia remarked. There are many varieties with different effects, but even the weakest ones are worth a fortune. My family had one, but it was reserved only for the patriarch, Kulis said. Forget about seeing it. I have never even gotten close to it. Just who the hell is this Han Zexian anyway? Ren Xia wondered out loud. We know pretty much nothing about him besides that he was the first one to reach the immortal realm. Knowing his vast fortune now, I'm not the slightest surprised. And here is another thing Han Zexian left behind. Tian Yang produced several herbs from his spatial ring, the very same ones that were growing under the waterfall. Since he wasn't an alchemist, he wasn't able to use them, so he simply decided to keep them. Heavens! Ren Xia stood up in shock. Do you have any idea what these are? The ingredients to concoct the heavenly, unrestricted longevity pill, right? He said. Not just that, they're priceless treasures used in a variety of high-end pills. They're near extinct nowadays. But that's not why I am surprised. You know, Kula suddenly spoke. Normally you store them in containers specifically used for such treasures so they don't lose their effects. What? Tian Yang raised his eyebrows in surprise. I just tossed them inside my spatial ring. Are they useless now? Of course not. It just means their effects will be weakened. Kula stood up and walked to his drawers where he retrieved a large wooden box. Here, put them in here. This will seal their aroma and keep them fresh for as long as they're contained. Thanks, Tian Yang followed his instructions. But I still have no use for them now. I don't need any more longevity pills either. What should I do with them? Kulis pondered for a moment before responding, I know an alchemist. If you want, I can have him concoct a pill using those materials. It'll greatly benefit your cultivation. Really? That'll be great, Tian Yang immediately agreed. Chapter 273. The method to becoming a giant. By the time Tian Yang finished recounting his experience inside Han Zexian's cavern, the tea had arrived. These tea leaves are exclusive to this continent. I cultivated them myself, Kula said as he poured each of them a cup. When Tian Yang took a sip, he immediately sensed a change within his body. His physique had been refined, as though he had just undergone an intense body tempering session. My body's getting a little sore. Aren't teas supposed to help you relax? I feel the exact opposite right now, Tian Yang said with a stiff smile. Kulas burst into laughter at his remark. Relax? That word doesn't even exist in the giant race's dictionary. This isn't going to give me a body as grotesque as yours, right? Ren Xia muttered as she hurriedly set her cup down, fearing that her body might become too muscular for Tian Yang's taste. Hey, Hey, who are you calling grotesque? You have no idea how much effort it took to achieve this physique, Kulas protested, flexing his muscles proudly. This isn't something you can get just by drinking tea. So there's no need to worry. The tea only strengthens your foundation and repairs most of the damage in your body, even the kind of restoration pills can't heal. The reason you're feeling sore is because your muscles were just restored. Kula shot Renzia a look and sighed. I don't understand your taste. What's so appealing about that bony physique of yours? There's nothing to feel besides skin and bone. I don't expect someone built like a walking mountain to get it. Your brain is likely made entirely of muscle, too, Ren Xia retorted. Kulas laughed and turned to Tian Yang. Why don't I introduce you to a few women here? Once you experience their muscles, you'll never go back to that skeleton beside you. You looking for a fight? Ren Xia snapped. How dare you suggest my darling sleep with another woman right in front of me? What's wrong with that? It's not uncommon for a man to have several wives, especially if they're powerful. I have over 20 wives right now, or do you intend on keeping him to yourself? I know, Ren Xia replied, folding her arms, a hint of defensiveness in her posture. I'm not fond of the idea of sharing him. But if he genuinely fell in love with someone else, I'd rather accept it than let jealousy destroy what we have. Tian Yang shook his head and said, I doubt I'll ever love someone else, especially since I am no longer going on adventures alone, so you don't have to worry about that. Never say never, Kula said. All right, let's put this topic behind us. Why don't you tell me what you've been doing, especially after we rescued you from the immortal confinement dungeon? Kulas leaned back, closed his eyes, and crossed his arms, sinking into a wordless silence. He broke the silence a moment later. Truthfully, I barely remember anything after I was freed. My mind wasn't stable, so I must have wandered for some time. By the time I came to my senses, I had already ended up on this continent. Then you remembered declaring yourself the ruler of this continent? Why did you do something that would only bring attention to yourself? Tian Yang asked. I acted on instincts, probably, he replied. Probably? Even after I regained my senses, I wasn't fully healed, Kulas said with a sigh. My personality was nothing like it is now, and it took hundreds of years to recover. In fact, I didn't fully return to my original self until shortly before I reopened the continent. Then let's forget the reason behind your actions. How did you create the giants' race? I heard from a giant that you bestowed your blood upon them. Ah, that giant was named Karan. Tian Yang didn't forget his promise to give the giant's name to Kulas. That's not entirely correct, Kulas said. My blood is exceptionally potent to the point where even my children have difficulty refining it, let alone ordinary people. What they carry isn't my direct blood, but my children's, derived from my lineage, yet far weaker in comparison. The only time I gave my blood was in the beginning, when I hadn't fully realized the power of my bloodline. And how does that work? Surely they weren't born as giants. He shook his head. No, anyone not born of my direct lineage began as an ordinary human. It was only after they absorbed and refined my bloodline that they became giants. Your bloodline, then? It wasn't a result of the great mammoth body refinement technique? Tian Yang muttered. Our understanding of bloodlines is still limited. How did you come to possess yours? Through trial and error, I suppose. And I'd never share the great mammoth body refinement technique with ordinary people. Even within my own family, I only teach them half of the full method. Are the massive beasts you're doing as well? Ren Xia asked. Yes. We giants possess extraordinary strength, and ordinary beasts no longer pose any threat to us, which is a problem since we rely on them for training. So we strengthened them by giving them our blood, he continued. Of course, training isn't the only reason. They're also our source of nutrients. Tiny beasts wouldn't even fill the gaps between our teeth. Can anybody receive your bloodline and turn into giants? Tian Yang then asked. Kulas hesitated for a moment before shaking his head. Of course not. Many have died attempting to become giants, but we don't force anyone onto our path. It's no different from the sects in the outside world, except that, instead of teaching cultivation techniques, we offer the chance to undergo the transformation into a giant. Anyone who desires strength may choose it. How would one even go about requesting such a thing? I didn't notice any form of recruitment. You'd be surprised by how many seek us out, Kulas replied with a smile. Most ask about our methods out of simple curiosity, but some truly wish to become giants themselves, even if it'll bind them to this continent for the rest of their lives. Chapter 25254, Giant Emperor Kulas's Family. Hearing Kulas's words, Tian Yang finally voiced the question that had lingered in his mind ever since learning about the giant race. I've wondered about this for a long time, but why don't any of you venture beyond the continent? At first I assumed it was simply a preference that giants chose to remain here. But from what you're saying, it sounds like you don't have a choice. Is something binding your people to this land? Kulas shook his head. No, nothing is binding us, he explained. It's just that the outside world isn't ready to face our race. When we first established ourselves, a few giants did leave the continent. Every one of them faced scrutiny and harassment, constant provocation, suspicion, and hostility. Not a single one returned without injuries. That's why we decided to remain on this continent. Those who come here are already aware of our existence, and even if they try to harass us, we're surrounded by our fellow people. Of course, we won't remain secluded on this continent forever. Once our giant's race is known far and wide, we'll leave, give it a few thousand years. Even though the giant race had existed for hundreds of years, the divine heavens were so vast that most of the world remained unaware of them, particularly those living in rural regions. Not to mention, the giant's continent had sealed itself off for some time. With that said, we're not in a hurry to leave this place. We're quite satisfied with our current lives after all, said Kulas. Anyway, what are your plans now that you've defeated the immortal clans? He then asked the couple. Tian Yang and Ren Xie exchanged glances with each other. We've been living a quiet and peaceful life ever since then, and we don't have any plans on changing that lifestyle anytime soon, Tian Yang said. So you're not particularly doing anything. In that case, what do you think about staying here with me? I've been looking for a new sparring partner, but it's not easy to find a decent one since there is nobody on this continent who can even give me a challenge these days. You want us to live in the giant's continent? Tian Yang muttered. Of course, you can live here in the palace with me. We have plenty of spare rooms. We'll also take care of all of your amenities. Are you sure? I don't want to intrude on your family. It's the least I can do for my sworn brother who saved my life. Tian Yang looked at Ren Xie and asked, What do you think want to stay here for a little? Ren Xie shrugged. I don't care where we stay as long as I am with you. Tian Yang smiled. Then it's decided. He turned to face Kulas and said, Please take care of us, my new sparring partner. Ha 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 ha! I should be saying that. Kulas laughed out loud. They continued chatting for another day. All right, how about we meet the rest of my family now? They should have gathered by now. Kulas suddenly suggested. Sounds good. Tian Yang and Ren Xie followed Kulas back to the throne room where they first met. When they arrived and entered the room, they were immediately met by over 100 gazes. Inside, 133 giants lined up in an orderly fashion. Tian Yang's eyes widened with surprise when he saw the scene. All of them are your children? He asked. Not all. Some of them are my wives, he responded with a prideful smile. Looks like you've been doing more than just play emperor for the last few hundred years, Ren Xie remarked. Rather than being offended, Kulas chuckled at her words. He approached his family and loudly declared, These two will be staying with us for some time. The one to my left is my sworn brother and best friend, Tian Yang. The one to my right is his wife. Now, I want you all to introduce yourselves, starting from the oldest. At his command, the man standing on the far left took a step forward and loudly introduced himself. I am the oldest. My name is Du Xiaowing. Then the woman standing right next to him stepped forward and spoke. I am his mother and the first wife, Du Shanyun. One by one, his family introduced themselves without any pauses, almost as if they'd practiced for this moment. Finally, the youngest stepped forward. I am the youngest, Shi Mei. Unfortunately, my mother died right after my birth. Kulas then said to Tian Yang, "As you can probably tell from their introduction, the children take after their mother's surname. The reason is simply that I have abandoned my surname the same way my family abandoned me." Tian Yang then stepped forward and said, "Kulas already introduced me, but I'm Tian Yang, and I will be staying here for some time to be his sparring partner. If you have any questions or just want to talk, don't hesitate to approach me. Let's all get along." Although no one spoke, Tian Yang could feel their intense gazes fixed on him. Some held simple curiosity, but most carried motives that were far less innocent. However, that didn't necessarily mean their intentions were malicious. "Are you not going to introduce yourself too?" Kulas asked Ren Xia. "Why? You already introduced me, and I don't really have anything else to add." "If you say so." He turned to his family and said, "You're all dismissed." They bowed immediately before leaving the room. A few of them looked as though they wanted to speak with Tian Yang, but in the end they held their tongues and left without saying anything. At the very end, Xie Mei stopped before Tian Yang briefly and said, "Let's have a chat later. I'm quite interested in the outside world." "Sure thing." Tian Yang nodded. "I'll contact you later then." Xie Mei gave a slight bow before leaving the room. Chapter 20275 Kulas' Personal World. Once they were alone again, Kulas said, "Your room is already being prepared as we speak, so let's check out the training area, shall we?" Let's. Tian Yang nodded. Kulas then led them to the back of the palace, where a flower garden of massive unknown plants was growing. As they walked through the garden path, Kulas explained, "This is where I grow my tea leaves." "How do you grow them?" Ren Xia asked. Kulas showed a mysterious smile on his face. "Are you sure you want to know?" Ren Xia frowned at his ominous words and quickly said, "You'd better tell us, especially since you fed it to us." Kulas let out a laugh. "I grow them in special soil that's been infused with my blood." "Your blood again? Do you consider it some kind of universal treasure that improves everything it touches? If you're worried about side effects, worry not. We've done extensive testing until we're certain of their safety for consumption. Of course, this goes for the magical beasts outside as well." "And how many people have died during those tests?" Ren Xia asked with a quick sneer. Nobody died, at worst. A few had upset stomachs for several weeks. Once they left the garden, they arrived at an empty courtyard with a single guard protecting a circular platform with array symbols etched all over it. "This lowly subject greets His Majesty." The guard bowed the moment he saw them. Kulas gave a slight nod of acknowledgement before speaking to Tian Yang. "We're almost there." A moment later, they stood on the platform before being teleported to a new location. "Where are we?" Tian Yang muttered as he found himself standing on a massive platform while surrounded by water. "We're inside a separate dimension, one completely isolated from the outside world," he explained calmly. "What?" Tian Yang raised his eyebrows, clearly puzzled. At this point in history, the concept of creating one's own world was still in its infancy, and very few people were even aware that such a feat was possible. "How does it work?" Tian Yang asked. "It's similar to how a spatial ring or storage pouch works. In simpler words, we're currently inside a massive spatial ring. Not only is it much more massive, but it can also contain living beings. In here, no matter how much damage we do during our training, it won't affect the outside world." "How does one create their own world?" Ren Xia inquired. "It's not easy or cheap. Not only does it require a tremendous amount of resources, but you will also need to maintain the world after its creation. As for how they're created, you'll need to ask the expert who created the world in the first place. I am only supplying the necessary spirit stones to operate it." "And how expensive is it to maintain the world?" Ren Xia continued to ask. "This world is relatively small, but even a world of this size costs around 100 million spirit stones to create and thousands of spirit stones a day to maintain it. If you train in here and damage the place, it could easily consume over 100,000 spirit stones for repairs." "Heavens, it is that expensive? You're literally throwing away money at this point. Why don't you just create a normal training ground? That will definitely be much cheaper to create and maintain, even if you destroy it and have to remake it every day. Well, I have no other uses for spirit stones. We earn more than we ever need, just from selling our materials to the merchants who visit our continent. After a slight pause, he continued, "Keep this between us, but we also have several large spirit veins on the continent, earning us hundreds of thousands of spirit stones a day." Spirit veins, huh? If word of it were to spread, there'd definitely be trouble, Tian Yang remarked. Spirit veins were the only reliable source of spirit stones and the origin of most that circulated in the world. Nearly all of them were controlled by large and powerful backgrounds, and whenever a new vein was discovered, it often sparked fierce wars as countless powers fought for ownership. If several spirit veins existed on the giant's continent, they would undoubtedly attract countless greedy and ambitious individuals. And while the giant race was exceptionally powerful and their territory difficult to reach, that alone would not be enough to deter those kinds of people from stirring up trouble. Given their immeasurable value, knowledge of such spirit veins was typically guarded from everyone, including one's own closest allies. Yet Kula shared it openly with Tian Yang and Ren Xia, demonstrating the extent of his trust. "I get that you're rich, but it still feels a bit wasteful," Ren Xia said, shaking her head. Kula smiled. "If we use this place only as a training ground, then yes. But it also serves as a safe house and a vault." "A vault? I don't see one." Tian Yang said as he looked around, seeing nothing but water for as far as the horizon goes. A single world can have multiple layers. This world has 2 layers, and we're currently in the first layer. "I see how intriguing," Tian Yang murmured, the thought of forging a world of his own stirring within him. Throughout his battles with the immortal clans, he had plundered their valuables whenever he could, amassing a mountain of treasures and spirit stones. But until this moment, he'd had no idea how any of it could be used. "Are you thinking about what I currently am?" Ren Xia suddenly spoke to him. "About making our own world? A paradise for just the 2 of us. It'd be very romantic," she chuckled. "We'll have to learn the method for creating it first, though." Kulas then said, "I'll introduce you to the expert later if you can defeat me in a match." Tian Yang looked at him with a raised eyebrow. "Right now?" "Right now," Kulas confirmed, Chapter 2276, sparring with Kulas. Kulas jumped to the center of the platform and beckoned Tian Yang. "Don't tell me you're afraid of losing." Tian Yang smiled at his provocation and also flew to the center of the platform. "Don't cry when I beat you," he said. "Not only is my physique superior, but so is my cultivation." Kulas released his aura, and his true immortal cultivation base surged outward like a massive tidal wave. Yet the water around them remained still, almost as if they were simply an illusion. "I'd be very surprised if you could hurt me, much less defeat me." "We'll find out soon enough." The atmosphere grew heavy as both of them fell silent. In the next instant, their figures vanished, only to collide a heartbeat later, unleashing a powerful ripple that swept across the entire world. "Oh, not bad," remarked Kulas when Tian Yang wasn't immediately flung away. "Most can't even handle this." "Well, I'm not like most," Tian Yang calmly responded with a smile. "Of course not. Would you be here if you weren't special?" Kulas laughed out loud as they continued to exchange blows with each other, using nothing but their physiques. The 2 gradually increased their strength with each blow, and although Tian Yang managed to endure for a while, Kulas inevitably overpowered him. "I'm impressed, shocked even," Kulas said suddenly. "You forced me to use 60% of my full strength. Out of my 101 children, only 5 can manage that, and you're just a human with an ordinary physique. Have you forgotten who taught you the great mammoth body refinement technique? Although I am nowhere near your level, I have trained this technique quite extensively over the years, since it's the only worthy body refining technique that I know." "That makes sense. But are you sure you didn't do it to satisfy your partner?" Kulas chuckled. Ren Xia's ears twitched at Kulas's words. "So you can use it to enhance that," she exclaimed. Kulas looked at her with raised eyebrows. What? Don't tell me you've never used it on her? You have no idea what you're missing out on. Tian Yang sighed. Do you want to fight, or would you rather talk about nonsense? I don't have the energy to do both. All right, all right. Kulas chuckled a little before putting on a serious face again. Do you need more time to warm up? He then asked. No, do you? Then let's fight seriously. Their subsequent collision was no longer a contest of physique alone, and they began drawing upon their martial techniques. Tian Yang shifted fluidly between countless styles, while Kulas remained steadfast, using only his fist techniques. Kulas hadn't always been a fist fighter. Once he wielded a sword. But every technique he'd learned with it had come from the family he now despised. For that reason, he vowed never to draw a blade again. Another reason was simple pride. He could not bring himself to rely on a weapon that was not his own flesh. Among body refiners, this was common. They took immense pride in their physiques and used their bodies as their primary weapons. It demonstrated both their hard work and their confidence. As the fight dragged on, Kulas, who'd been so confident in his abilities, began to feel pressure mounting against him. The sensation baffled him. He possessed a superior physique and higher cultivation, and only minutes ago he had overwhelmed Tian Yang with a little more than half his strength. But now he found himself barely keeping up with Tian Yang's movements, as though he were getting slower. What's wrong? You're sweating pretty heavily there. Tian Yang suddenly poked at him. This is normal, Tian Yang smiled faintly. You're incredibly strong, Kulas, no one can deny that, but you don't know how to use that strength. At the moment, you fight like a wild beast. Your moves are simple and predictable. You depend too heavily on brute force. Are you seriously lecturing me? Kulas exclaimed, looking utterly speechless. This is why we're sparring, isn't it? Tian Yang replied calmly. To expose each other's flaws and improve. After some time, Kulas collapsed onto the platform, a bewildered look frozen on his face. I lost? He murmured, in a daze. He had no serious injuries, and Tian Yang's attacks had barely hurt him, yet somehow he had still been defeated. You lack experience, Kulas, Tian Yang said as he walked toward him. You've probably defeated most, if not all, of your opponents with sheer overwhelming strength, so you never needed to rely on proper technique. But I fought the immortal clans. Did you really think I defeated them through brute force alone? Not to mention that I have hundreds of years of real experience while you're secluded in this place. When was the last time you were in a life-or-death situation? And Kulas was left speechless, partly from shock and partly because he had no rebuttal. Despite his overwhelming strength, he undeniably lacked experience. The last time he had truly fought was during his early days when he returned to the desolate continent and had to fight to prove his strength. In recent years, he had devoted the majority of his time to governing the continent from his throne room. The rare moments he could spare for battle were limited to sparring sessions with his children or his soldiers. In contrast to Tian Yang, who fought nearly every day at the risk of his life, the disparity between them was as great as that between heaven and earth. After a moment of silence, Kulas suddenly burst out laughing. Ha ha ha, you're truly amazing, Tian Yang. He abruptly declared, as expected of my sworn brother, I'm truly glad to have someone like you as a sparring partner starting now. He sat up and continued, all right, as promised, I'll introduce the expert who created this world for me. Hell, I'll even help you make your own. Thanks, replied Tian Yang, as he extended an arm to help Kulas up Chapter 2277, Heaven-Defying Ascension Pill. After their spar, Kulas brought Tian Yang and Ren Xia to their new living quarters. I assumed the two of you wanted to live in the same room, so I only prepared this room. If you want separate rooms, let me know, said Kulas. How thoughtful, Ren Xia remarked. But you're not wrong. Tian Yang walked into the room and expressed slight surprise. This room is normal-sized. I thought every room in this palace was meant for giants, or did you specifically create this just for us? Kulas smiled and said, You know, there are times when I feel like walking around in my original size, so there are rooms in here dedicated to humans. Not to mention, we receive human-sized guests all of the time. I see. Well, I have to return to work now. If there is anything you need, don't hesitate to ask the servants. Of course, you can bother me whenever, Kulas said. Thanks for everything. After Kulas left, Tian Yang and Ren Shaya went to familiarize themselves with their new living space. Although it existed within the palace, the room was huge, with several other connecting rooms. I'm going to take a shower, Tian Yang said, as he was still soaked in sweat from his sparring with Kulas. Sure. Shortly after Tian Yang entered the bathroom, Ren Xia entered as well. Without warning, of course. Tian Yang was resting in the bathtub when she walked in, and after quickly washing her body, she also entered the bathtub, resting her slender body on top of his. How long do you think we'll stay here? She asked. Who knows? It's not like we have anywhere else to be. I guess so. After several minutes of silence, Ren Xia suddenly reached for the sword, pressing against her back, and said, Once we're done here, I want to experience what Kulas had mentioned. Knowing that he can't avoid this subject forever, Tian Yang let out a long, defeated sigh. Fine. He had known this moment would come when the subject was first brought up. Sometime later, they moved into the bedroom, where Tian Yang demonstrated the capabilities of the great mammoth body refinement technique. Rather than enlarging his entire physique, however, he focused the technique on a single area. Heavens! Ren Xia stared at his enlarged sword, her eyes wide with excitement and a hint of nervousness. Will this even fit? She mumbled in a mosquito-like voice. Noticing the hesitation in her gaze, Tian Yang teased. Don't tell me you're going to run away now. You're the one who suggested this. Run away, don't insult me, Ren Xia said, pushing Tian Yang down with surprising force. She embraced him fully, accepting his enlarged sword without hesitation. A brief wince of pain crossed her face, but it was quickly replaced by a soft gasp as discomfort quickly shifted into overwhelming warmth. It feels like I'm doing it for the first time again, she remarked, with a playful smile, eyes gleaming with desire thus. Tian Yang and Ren Xia began their life on the giant's continent with Kulas and his family. Several days later, Xie Mei sought out Tian Yang, eager to learn about the world beyond the continent. He told her of his journeys through the divine heavens, his words flowing like stories from a book of legends, as if he were reading fairy tales to a child. Thank you, Senior. I'll visit you again later. Sometime later, Kulas approached Tian Yang with the expert who created his world. This is Lu, and a level 6 array master. He's the expert I told you about. It's a pleasure to meet you, Senior. Yuan gave a polite bow before continuing. The creation of a world begins with array symbols, so unless you are an array master, it's impossible to create your own world. Tian Yang nodded and said, I see. Although I am no expert, I have studied array symbol over the years. That said, I'm likely nowhere close to the level required to create my own world. Worry not. Even if you are a complete beginner, I am here to teach you. Really? Aren't array masters typically busy, especially one at your level? Yuan smiled and said, typically, yes. However, I am the Giant Emperor's exclusive array master, and he instructed me to teach you. So you will be my priority until you can create your own world. In that case, I'll be in your care. Kulas then spoke. By the way, remember the ingredients you showed me? The ones I found in Han Zexian's cavern? What about them? Have you forgotten already? I told you that I would find an alchemist to concoct a treasure using those ingredients. He'll arrive in a month. If you don't want to, let me know. No, go ahead. It's not like I have any other use for them. Tian Yang took out the sealed ingredients from his spatial ring and handed them to Kulas without hesitation. Let me know when it's done. Sure. From that day forward, Tian Yang devoted himself to learning array symbols under the tutelage of Yuan, a level 6 array master who was considered to be at the pinnacle of his craft at that time. Aside from studying array symbols, Tian Yang sparred with Kulas once a week. He also sparred with Ren Xia from time to time. But their other kind of sparring, the one that took place in the bedroom, happened nearly every day. Several months later, Kulas gave Tian Yang the completed treasure that was created using the ingredients he found in Han Zexian's cavern. This is the heaven-defying ascension pill. Kulas introduced the pill as if it were nothing out of the ordinary. "What does it do?" Tianyang asked. Kulas smiled and replied, "That's a secret. You'll find out once you consume it." "You're telling me to consume a pill with unknown effects?" Tianyang raised his eyebrows, forgetting that was precisely what he did in Han Zexian's cavern several times. At that, "What, do you think I'll poison you or something?" Kulas glared at him. "Of course not." Tianyang accepted the pill and added, "Thanks, I'll take it later today." At that moment, he had no idea just how precious and heaven-defying the pill truly was. Chapter 2278 Effects of the Heaven-Defying Ascension Pill. "Come see me after you consume that pill. Until then," Kulas didn't linger and immediately left. Tianyang returned to his room shortly after to show Renxia the pill. "Have you ever heard of the Heaven-Defying Ascension Pill before?" he asked her. "No, but it sounds very powerful." "What kind of pill is it?" "I don't know." "Kulas didn't tell me," he said. "It's a surprise." Renxia inspected the pill for a moment before speaking. "This pill contains ingredients other than the ones you gave him. A lot of them, actually. I guess I'll find out its effects soon." "Are you going to consume it now?" He quietly nodded. Moments later, he tossed the pill into his mouth and closed his eyes to concentrate. The pill dissolved almost instantly upon contact, flooding his mouth with a rich medicinal taste before flowing smoothly down his throat. Renxia stood quietly at his side, her attention fixed on every subtle shift in his aura and physique. Then, without warning, a tremendous burst of energy exploded from Tianyang's body. The resulting shock wave tore through the room, destroying every piece of furniture in an instant. Heavens, what is this amount of energy? Before Renxia could even fully grasp the situation, she noticed that Tianyang's cultivation, which had only recently entered Golden Immortal, was soaring to the next realm. In the span of several breaths, Tianyang's cultivation reached the peak of Golden Immortal, and after another moment surged into the next realm, becoming a true immortal. However, it didn't stop there, and Tianyang's cultivation continued to grow. It was only when his cultivation reached the pinnacle of the true immortal realm that his aura began to subside. Tianyang opened his eyes almost immediately and turned to Renxia with a dumbfounded expression. Renxia stared back at him with the exact same look on her face. "How long was I cultivating just now?" he asked, in a somewhat nervous voice. "A minute, 2 minutes at most," she replied. Then she asked, "Did time feel different for you?" Tianyang shook his head and explained, "Everything happened so quickly that I was only able to watch. I didn't even do anything after swallowing the pill." "I've never seen anyone's cultivation rise that fast," Renxia murmured. But soon a worried look clouded her face. "It's incredible that your cultivation improved so quickly, but I'm afraid there might be side effects. Something this powerful can't be without at least 1 or 2 drawbacks." Tianyang inspected his body and said, "Besides the overflowing energy coursing through my body, I don't feel any different." He then stood up and continued, "But I should speak with Kulas, just in case." Renxia nodded, and the two of them went to meet Kulas together. "You've returned quicker than I thought." Kulas smiled the moment he saw them. "How was the pill?" "It was amazing, a little too good if I have to be honest. What did you even feed me? And do I have to worry about any drawbacks?" "I told you what I gave you." "The heaven-defying ascension pill," Kulas calmly responded with a playful smile on his face. "And you don't need to worry about drawbacks, because there are none." "I also consumed one after all." Tianyang raised an eyebrow and asked, "Is that how you achieved true immortal?" He nodded, "Yes, and I consumed it 100 years ago." "So what exactly is this pill?" "It's the first time I'm hearing its name," Renxia spoke up. "It's a pill that will instantly improve one's cultivation by half a realm, even if they're an immortal." "Wait, half a realm? Are you sure?" Tianyang asked in a doubtful voice. "After all, my cultivation improved by nearly 2 realms." "What?" Kulas raised his eyebrows, looking puzzled by his statement. It was at this moment that Kulas realized Tianyang's cultivation had already reached true immortal. "No, it was at the peak of true immortal." "What the hell?" Kulas exclaimed as he stood up with a dumbfounded look on his face. You were only at the early stages of Golden Immortal, so you couldn't have reached true Immortal, much less the peak with the heaven-defying Ascension pill. I was already at the peak of Golden Immortal when I consumed the pill. Tianyang shook his head. I don't know what to tell you since it's your pill. Kulas fell silent for a long moment to ponder the possibilities. Could it be due to the ingredients you gave me? They were much more potent than what I used for my own pill, after all. However, even then, it shouldn't have increased the pill's effect so drastically. Now you're making me worried. Tianyang sighed. Kulas awkwardly cleared his throat before speaking. Come with me. We'll have an alchemist take a look at your condition. The alchemist is still here? Not the one who concocted the pill, but we have another alchemist staying with us. Kulas didn't wait around and immediately led Tianyang to said alchemist. Hello. A giant woman greeted them shortly after Kulas knocked on her door. You are one of Kulas' wives? Tianyang recognized this woman. Although this is only his second time seeing her, he remembered her from the family introduction a few months ago. And you are His Majesty's sworn brother, Senior Tianyang, correct? She responded with a calm smile. Chao Shaoying, I need you to take a thorough examination of his body immediately. Kulas immediately cut to the chase. The woman named Chao Shaoying transformed in the next moment, shrinking her massive form until she stood at their height. What's wrong with his body? Did he get hurt during your spar? She asked. No, he consumed the heaven-defying Ascension pill, and his cultivation improved more than what should be possible. I'm worried that something might be wrong with his body, Kulas explained. Chapter 2279, A Special Physique. I see, come inside. Chao Shaoying gestured for them to enter her room. Once inside and seated, Chao Shaoying continued. Now, can you elaborate on the situation for me? What was different from when you consumed it? Kulas proceeded to explain the situation, how Tianyang's cultivation had increased by nearly 2 realms while his own cultivation had only improved by barely half a realm. My first thought was that the ingredients used in his pill were simply of higher quality than those I had, he said, voicing his conclusion. That is impossible, Chao Shaoying responded immediately, her tone firm and assured. I was there when the pill was concocted. In fact, I even assisted, so I'm fully aware of the potency of its ingredients. They were certainly superior, and the pill was undeniably of higher quality than yours, but not to a degree that would create such a drastic difference. Then what do you think is going on? Kulas asked. Chao Shaoying turned to look at Tianyang and replied, I'll have to check his body first. Go ahead. Tianyang extended his arm toward her. Chao Shaoying immediately began examining his body with divine sense, then divine gaze. After a long minute of silence, she released his arm and spoke in a puzzled voice. His body, there's nothing wrong with it. If anything, it's in perfect condition. As for the pill he consumed, I can still feel its energy, even though it should have been long gone by now. What does that mean? Kulas asked. In situations like these, it means he managed to absorb a higher than normal portion of the pill's effects, she explained. Even if a pill is created at full efficiency, people usually absorb only 10 to 50% of its effects, while the rest are discarded. The exact amount varies greatly depending on their talent and whether they possess a unique physique. However, Senior Tian has somehow retained the portion of the pill he wasn't able to absorb, and it's continuing to strengthen his body even now. As for how much he absorbed from the pill, I'd say anywhere between 80 to 90%. That sounds like a good thing, Ren Shah remarked. That's more than good. This is literally unprecedented. I have been an alchemist for almost my entire life, and I have never encountered anyone who could refine more than half of a pill's full effect. Do you have some kind of heavenly physique? Kulas asked while looking at Tianyang with a surprised face. Tianyang shook his head and responded confidently, Of course not. If I were born with such a divine physique, I wouldn't have struggled so much in the past. Even now, my talent is only above average. Above average? According to what criteria? Kulas asked. From my perspective, you're already a monster. No one who is merely above average could defeat me. If that were the case, then the rest of the world would be considered below average at best. Chao Shuing stared at Kulis in bewilderment. She had never seen him praise anyone to such a degree, not even his own children. "Have you ever even checked to see whether you have a unique physique?" Renxia asked, cutting into the conversation. "I did shortly after joining the Immortal Monastery. They examine all new disciples to ensure there's no hidden diamond," he said. "The Immortal Monastery? Never heard of them," Kulis said. "Ah, wait, I have," he quickly corrected himself. "Weren't they attacked by the Immortal clans while you were still at war with each other?" "Yes, they tried to draw me out by using the Immortal Monastery as bait. I nearly died on that day." "I've been curious about that ever since I heard what happened, but why did you take the bait?" Kulis asked. That's a certain figure surfaced in Tian Yang's mind. "I had no real attachment to that place, and I even lost a friend there. But something good did come out of it, Elder Sun." "Elder Sun? Do you remember the woman I shouted at outside Han Zexian's tomb?" Tian Yang asked. "Oh, that pretty lady? Of course. I even remember her bewildered expression. That was Elder Sun, an elder of the Immortal Monastery. Though she is not my master, she has always looked after me and saved my life several times when I trained recklessly as a disciple. If I were to describe our relationship, it would resemble that of siblings, with her as the elder's sister." "I see. So you went back to save her. Well, did you?" Kulis asked. Tian Yang shook his head. "No, she wasn't there when I returned. Many people had died long before I showed up, and I searched through every corpse, but she wasn't among them. After going through every corpse I could, I eventually gave up and left. So there's a good chance that she wasn't at the sect at that time and is still alive," Kulis remarked. "I hope that's really true, since I still owe her an apology for that day." Tian Yang sighed. After a short pause, Kulis resumed. "Now then, back to our main topic. Although your body was examined at the Immortal Monastery, it's possible they failed to do so thoroughly because their equipment wasn't sufficient. Not all sects have the proper tools, and only high-grade treasures can identify high-grade physiques, especially back then. Considering it's been hundreds of years since your last examination, I'd say there's a very high chance that's the case." "So I should evaluate my body again?" Tian Yang asked. "Where can I go to do that?" Kulis smiled and replied, "Fortunately for you, we have just what you need already available here. You really have everything here, don't you?" Tian Yang smiled. "Of course, this is the only way we can survive such a secluded life. I can do the examination for you right now if you want," Chao Shaoying said. "Then I'll have to bother you a little longer." Tian Yang nodded. Chapter 2280, Tian Yang's Physique. Once Tian Yang agreed to have his physique examined, Chao Shaoying led him to another room where a single large device stood alone at its center. The device was pitch black, its surface resembling polished obsidian. Shaped like a rectangular coffin, it was covered in golden array symbols that shimmered softly, giving it an otherworldly beauty. "I was expecting something massive, something meant for giants," Tian Yang remarked, when he saw how ordinary in size the device was. Chao Shaoying smiled. "Do you have any idea how many materials we'd need to build one on a giant scale? Even if we had the funds, this world doesn't have enough resources to make it. Is that so?" Chao Shaoying proceeded to hand him a white cloth and said, "Remove all of your clothes and cleanse your entire body in that bathroom over there. Once you're done, wear this and come back out." Tian Yang didn't ask any questions and simply followed her instructions. Several minutes later, he stepped out of the bathroom wearing nothing but a white cloth wrapped around his waist. "You have a well-balanced physique. Are you also a body refiner?" Chao Shaoying questioned him after seeing his refined physique, neither too muscular nor too lean. "While I do temper my body occasionally, I wouldn't call myself a body refiner," he replied. "Now then, all you need to do is lie inside this device and wait for me to finish. Once it begins, you'll be submerged in liquid for a few minutes, so don't be too surprised when it happens. All right?" Tian Yang entered the coffin-shaped device, just large enough to contain him, and watched as Chao Shaoying lowered the lid, sealing him inside. Inside, it was completely silent and utterly dark, so still that his senses began to dull within moments. Then, without warning, he felt something warm rising around him, quickly submerging his body. As a cultivator of the true immortal realm, Tian Yang could hold his breath for days without difficulty. A few minutes posed no concern whatsoever. Some time later, Tian Yang felt the liquid rapidly draining away, and moments after it disappeared, Chao Shuoying opened the lid of the device. "It's done," she said. When Tian Yang regained his senses, he could instantly smell the strong medicinal scent on his body, presumably from the liquid. "What are the results?" Kulis asked, sounding a little impatient. Chao Shuoying looked at the device, which showed no reaction, and replied in a puzzled voice, "He doesn't have one." "What?" Kulis frowned. "How is that possible?" "I don't know, but the device isn't reacting at all. This only happens when the individual has no physique. So it wasn't his physique that caused the abnormal pill absorption rate." Kulis turned to look at Tian Yang and asked, "Are you sure you don't have a special bloodline?" "I don't know my real parents since I was abandoned before I could even crawl, but I also had my blood tested before. No results. We can also examine your blood here if you'd like." Chao Shuoying suddenly said, "What do you think?" "Since I am already here, might as well." "Very well, without any delay." Chao Shuoying retrieved a crimson needle from her spatial ring and said, "It won't take more than a minute. I just need to collect a few drops of your blood." Tian Yang nodded and offered his arm to her. Chao Shuoying promptly pricked his index finger with the crimson needle, drawing several drops of blood. The blood slid down the needle's surface and vanished, as though the needle had absorbed it. Moments later, the needle began to tremble, and Chao Shuoying felt a hot, almost searing sensation radiating from it. "Heavens! What kind of reaction is this?" Chao Shuoying exclaimed, struggling to keep her grip on the needle as it grew unbearably hot. Kulis and Ren Shea watched nervously while Tian Yang swallowed hard at the reaction from the needle. Eventually, the needle stopped moving, and Chao Shuoying released a deep sigh. "I've never seen the needle react this intensely before," she said, as she hurriedly switched it to her other hand. When she did, an imprint of the needle was revealed on her palm. The needle had grown so hot that it had actually branded her skin. "Are you okay?" Tian Yang asked. "It'll go away with the recovery pill," she calmly replied. "Anyway, judging by the needle's reaction, you definitely possess a unique bloodline. And not just that, it's likely a high-grade one." "High-grade bloodline? That's impossible," Tian Yang muttered with a dumbfounded look on his face. "How high are we talking?" Kulis questioned with a serious expression. Chao Shuoying met Kulis's gaze and said, "When we examined your mammoth bloodline, it only barely qualified as divine grade. But Senior Tian's reaction was even stronger. His bloodline is definitely at least divine grade." Kulis sucked in a cold breath at the results. "Do you hear that, brother? You possess a divine grade bloodline. Ain't that something?" Kulis exclaimed, turning to Tian Yang with eager anticipation. But when he saw Tian Yang's expression, there was no joy there, only confusion. "Divine grade?" "There must be a mistake," Tian Yang quickly said, rejecting the results. Before Kulis or Chao Shuoying could respond, Ren Xia interjected, "Wait a second, Kulis, when did you get a divine grade bloodline? Last I heard you had an imperial grade one, same as me. We both came from the immortal clans, remember?" Kulis calmly explained, "When I reached a certain mastery with great mammoth body refinement, it transformed my bloodline, increasing it to divine grade. However, my children are only between royal grade and imperial grade, so Senior Tien, whoever your parents are, they must be from a background that surpasses even the immortal clans," Chao Shuoying said. "Surpass the immortal clans? Aren't they already the most renowned and powerful out there?" Tian Yang asked, confusion evident. "Their name may be the most widely known in the divine heavens, but they are far from the most powerful," Ren Shaya replied. "Even at their height, there were at least 3 families they would never have dared to offend." Tian Yang stared at her with his mouth agape, clearly in disbelief. Chapter 2281, 3 Pillars of Heaven. Don't look so surprised, Kulas chuckled at Tian Yang's reaction. To ordinary people, the immortal clans are the pinnacle of power. Anything above that is simply beyond their understanding. However, for those of us in the immortal clans, we have to be aware of their existence even if we don't want to. Ren Xia then spoke. You know the saying, a frog in a well? In this case, you're the frog, and the immortal clans are the sky you see above. But there's still something beyond the sky, the starry sky. Who exactly are these people? Tian Yang asked. They are known as the Three Pillars of Heaven, she explained. They were the pioneers of cultivation. The first to discover the existence of spiritual energy and the fact that it could be absorbed through technique. How can there be three different families, though? Did they all discover cultivation at the same time or something? Tian Yang inquired. Ren Xia shook her head. No, they were originally a single background. But they grew so powerful that they eventually had to divide their strength into three branches. Kulas continued. The Three Pillars of Heaven consist of the Ji family, Tian family, and the Sun family. Did you just say the Sun family? Tian Yang looked at Kulas with wide eyes. Kulas looked puzzled by Tian Yang's reaction, but he quickly realized something. Don't tell me you think that elder son of yours is related to the Sun family. It's a very common surname in the divine heavens, and there's no way someone from the Sun family would be working as a sect elder in a place such as the Immortal Monastery. That's Tian Yang had no response. As Kulas had hit it right on the nail, after a moment of silence, he sighed. Although she never told me her background, she would occasionally allude to coming from a prominent family. I think I even overheard her mentioning the Holy Continent in the past to another elder. Wait, the Holy Continent? That is where the primary families of the Three Pillars of Heaven are located, Ren Xia said. Also, if we're talking about surnames, you have one of theirs as well. The Tian family's surname. What if your parents came from there? She continued. Tian Yang looked at her with a bitter smile. It's just a coincidence. Even though I never met my real parents, there's no way they'd be from such a place. After all, why would they abandon me in that backwater village? So your adoptive parents named you Tian Yang? Kulas suddenly asked. I don't know, however. They definitely didn't have the same surname. In fact, they were surnamed Yuan, and you never found that weird? I never really even thought about it. Chao Shiying then spoke. Nobody in this world but your parents can tell you why they abandoned you, but I can tell you with certainty that you have a divine grade bloodline. After a moment of silence, Ren Xia asked, What are you going to do now? What even is there for me to do? Tian Yang shrugged. Even if my real parents are truly from the Three Pillars of Heaven, my connection with them was cleanly severed the moment they abandoned me. With that being said, I still refuse to believe that my real parents are from such a place. In that case, let's wrap things up here, Chao Shouying said. Although you don't have a unique physique, you possess a divine-grade bloodline, something arguably even rarer, and that may very well be the reason behind your abnormal pill absorption rate. Wait a moment, Ren Xia suddenly said. We've confirmed he has a powerful bloodline, but is there any way to identify which one? If we knew that, we could take advantage of it. Chao Shiying shook her head. Not with the tools we currently have. This crimson needle was created only 2 years ago. It can measure the grade of a bloodline, but that's all. However, if you can somehow bring me the blood of someone from the Tian family, I can compare it with senior Tians and determine if there's a match. Blood from the Tian family? That's easier said than done. At this point, I'd have better luck getting Phoenix blood. Ren Xia sighed. Then we can only make use of what little information we have that he is capable of absorbing pill effects far more efficiently than most. Does the Tian family have this trait within their lineage? Chao Shiying asked. Unfortunately, even the immortal clans have very little information on the Three Pillars of Heaven, Ren Xia replied. Does it even matter what bloodline I have? I already know what it's capable of, and that's more than enough for me. Tian Yang interjected. Although I'm confident that it's the work of your bloodline, we cannot be certain until we do some testing, Chao Shiying said. More tests, huh? It'll be quite simple. We just need to feed you some more pills and see what happens. All right. And so Tian Yang began experimenting with his bloodline, taking all manner of pills, some that heightened strength, others that increased cultivation speed. Ren Xia and Kulas also took part in the tests to compare themselves with him. Unsurprisingly, the results were exactly as expected. Every pill Tian Yang consumed produced a much stronger effect than when either of them took the same pill. You should know, I was raised in a privileged environment. Envy isn't something I'm prone to, Chao Shoying said, yet I can't help but be deeply envious of your talent right now. Is it really that big of a deal? Tian Yang said. It just makes pills work better, doesn't it? Without the money to buy them, it's useless. No wonder I never noticed it in all these hundreds of years. Chao Shoying rubbed her eyes with a weary sigh. You honestly have no idea how terrifyingly powerful your bloodline is, do you? Others aside, even I would kill for such a talent. Kulas laughed and said, You may have learned about it late, but better late than never, right? Ha ha. Chapter 2282, A New Discovery. Better late than never, huh? Tian Yang sighed. Unfortunately, there is such a thing as being too late, and I'm already at that stage. What makes you say that? Kulas asked, his brows tightening. Look at me, Tian Yang replied. I am already a true immortal. At this stage, ordinary pills, even high-grade ones, are meaningless. Only something on the level of heaven-defying ascension pills would benefit me to an acceptable degree. If only I had realized this talent when I was still a disciple at the immortal monastery. That's nonsense, Kulas said while shaking his head. You make it sound like true immortal is the end of cultivation, when in reality it's just the beginning. There is always a higher cultivation realm, and very recently there has been a rumor regarding the discovery of a new kind of spiritual energy, surpassing even immortal ki. Is that true? Ren Xia asked, genuinely taken aback. Kulas shrugged. Why would I fabricate something like that? Though little is known right now, many believe it is the key that allows cultivators to surpass the immortal realm and step into an entirely different realm. He turned to Tian Yang and continued, Therefore, you shouldn't say something like being too late, Brother Tian. There's still so much to be discovered in this limitless world. I guess so. Tian Yang nodded, feeling much better after hearing Kula's words. Once the day came to an end, Tian Yang resumed his life on the giant's continent. He spent his days sparring with Kulas, studying array symbols under Yuan, and of course, accompanying Ren Xia in bed. From time to time, Chao Shoying would summon him so she could further study his bloodline. Although Tian Yang had little interest in his own bloodline, he found himself deeply intrigued by the three pillars of heaven, particularly their origins, and whether Elder Sun might have come from such a background. However, acquiring any information about the three pillars of heaven was nearly impossible without traveling to the Holy Continent, which was located on the far opposite side of the world, and Tian Yang had no plans to travel so far at this moment. In the blink of an eye, 20 years have passed since Tian Yang and Ren Xia started living with Kulas on the giant's continent. How is my brother's progress with his studies on array symbols? Kulas suddenly asked Yuan one day. Yuan gave a bittersweet smile as he replied, I was just about to bring that up, Your Majesty. Senior Tian, his talent for comprehension is extraordinary. He absorbs everything I teach him like a dry sponge desperate for water. Tell me about it, Kulas said with an entertained smile. Yuan gave a bittersweet smile as he replied, I was just about to bring that up, Your Majesty. Senior Tian, his talent for comprehension is extraordinary. He absorbs everything I teach him like a dry sponge desperate for water. Tell me about it, Kulas said with an entertained smile. In just 20 short years, he'd managed to catch up to me, who has studied array symbols for nearly my entire 700 years of life. Are you saying that he's already a level 6 array master like you? Kulas asked, eyebrows raised in surprise, although he was already aware of Tian Yang's terrifying comprehension talents. It was still hard to comprehend. No, Yuan replied with a shake of his head. His ability to comprehend and learn is extraordinary, but that doesn't mean he can apply it right away. Despite his terrifying comprehension, his practical experience remains quite normal. I understand then. Will you continue to instruct him? Kulas asked. Truthfully, I have nothing more to teach him, Yuan replied. What he needs now is practice, not guidance. Of course, should he have any questions, I will gladly assist. In that case, I shall relieve you of your duties, Kulas said. You may continue your own pursuits as you see fit. Thank you for accepting my request. I know it couldn't have been easy for an expert such as yourself to instruct a beginner. No, on the contrary, it was a learning experience for me as well. I've never seriously taught anyone before. In fact, I'm considering opening a school here on the continent so I can continue teaching others. What do you think, Your Majesty? A school for array masters, huh? Kulas mused. It would advance our continent even further, and we'd have far more array masters in the future. Very well, I'll allow it. No, I'll even give you my full support. Thank you, Giant Emperor. Even after being dismissed, Yuan continued to visit Tianyang and informed him of the situation on his next trip. I understand. Thank you for all your efforts, Tianyang said with a faint, bittersweet smile. You might be the first true master I've ever had. Seriously? Didn't you belong to a sect before? Yuan asked, surprised. Yes, but I trained alone most of the time. And whenever I did receive guidance, it was through public lectures with hundreds of disciples all listening at once. And unless you're exceptionally talented or have some kind of background or reputation, the elders won't approach you. Most disciples have to seek them out and hope to be accepted. Although I was close to an elder, I could never see her as my master, and she was more like an older sister to me. To think you have reached your current position without a proper master your entire life? Honestly, I'm having a hard time believing it. You always talk about lacking talent, but from where I am sitting, you're extremely talented. Thanks. Time flowed on, seasons came and went, and in the blink of an eye another 100 years had passed. During this time, the giant's continent continued to develop, and Kulas' influence started to spread beyond the continent. Ren Shah finally broke through and stepped into the golden immortal realm. As for Tianyang, he remained at the true immortal realm like Kulas. Yet the two of them could instinctively sense that they had reached a bottleneck, one that could not be surpassed through ordinary means, much like when they once stood on the verge of entering the immortal realm. However, while his cultivation made little to no progress, Tianyang had made significant progress as an array master and now qualified as a level 4 array master with his current skills. Chapter 22.8.3 Enlightened 1, Senior. Tian, you've been at our place for over 100 years at this point, but it feels like I'm the only one who knows you, Xie Mei remarked when she visited him one day to talk about her latest training session outside the palace. That's probably because you're the only one who approaches and talks to me, Tianyang said. After a slight pause, he continued. Madam Chow, too, I guess. Do you have no interest in the others? Is that why you're not making efforts to know them? Xie Mei then asked. Tianyang shrugged and said, although I see them in the halls from time to time, they have never even tried to speak with me. Hell, even their greetings are done in silence. But honestly, I don't feel bothered by it, probably because I don't really care. Is that so? Well, that works in my favor, Xie Mei chuckled. It means I get to keep you all to myself. She suddenly scanned the room and then asked, Where's Senior Ren? She's usually here whenever I visit. She recently started studying alchemy, so she spends most of her time with Madam Chow now. So, she's finally bored with you, huh? Xie Mei teased. Before he could respond, she continued, Say, have you ever thought about accepting another wife? No, I can't say that I have. Where is this coming from? Tianyang looked at her with raised eyebrows. Xie Mei let out a soft chuckle. Because I've considered becoming your partner. Huh? Tianyang blinked, startled. Why are you so surprised? She asked, amused by his reaction. I'm a perfectly healthy young woman. It's only natural for thoughts like that to cross my mind. It isn't the thought itself that concerns me. It's who you're thinking about. Tianyang sighed. Why me? I am your father's sworn brother, you know. So what? You're not actually his brother, and you're the only man close to me who isn't part of my own family. Not knowing how to handle her boldness, Tianyang quickly changed the subject. Have you spoken to your father about this? If not, you really should. She may smile. So you're saying that as long as he approves, you'll accept me? What? How did you twist my words into that? Tianyang sighed. Shi Mei chuckled. It sure is fun messing with you, Senior Tian. Anyway, I was just joking with you. Tianyang was speechless. Now then, I'll take my leave and continue my training. See you next time, Senior Tian. Shi Mei departed shortly after. However, instead of returning to her training as she claimed, she headed straight to Kulas, intent on discussing a certain matter. The years drifted by, and before they realized it, another 300 years had passed. 200 years ago, news of the Immortal Monastery's reopening reached Tianyang through Kulas. Now, 200 years later, they had not only fully recovered from the devastation wrought by the Immortal clans, but had even flourished, rising to become an elite sect. A certain piece of information about a groundbreaking discovery also began spreading like wildfire, sending shockwaves throughout the cultivation world. The rumor was said to have originated from the Holy Continent, claiming that someone had discovered an entirely new type of spiritual energy, one even stronger than immortal qi. It had first surfaced as nothing more than a whisper 300 years ago, but now it had grown into something far more substantial than a mere rumor. Have you heard? They've named this new spiritual energy Celestial Qi, and rumors claim that cultivating it could elevate an immortal cultivator to godhood. Kulas shared the news during a private meeting with Tianyang and Ren Xia. Celestial Qi, huh? Tianyang muttered with a pondering look on his face. How was it even discovered in the first place? Ren Xia asked. And has this person already gone past the true immortal realm, which is said to be the limit right now? Most importantly, can we trust this information? There have been numerous frauds throughout the years, after all. I'm not sure how it was discovered, but the information is definitely trustworthy, as it came directly from the 3 pillars of heaven, the pioneers of cultivation, huh? If so, this is indeed massive, Tianyang remarked. Maybe for them, but I highly doubt it will benefit us any time soon, Ren Xia shrugged. The 3 pillars of heaven will likely keep the method to cultivate celestial qi to themselves until they're far ahead of everyone else. It's exactly what happened when they discovered immortal qi, too. What? They discovered immortal qi as well. How? Tianyang muttered, stunned. It almost felt as though the 3 pillars of heaven were advancing the entire cultivation world on their own. They claim it came through enlightenment, Kulas said. After a brief silence, he continued, I only learned this because I once snuck into my father's room back when I was still in the Immortal Might clan. But within the 3 pillars of heaven, there is someone known as the Enlightened One. This person possesses a unique talent, the ability to receive divinations directly from heaven itself through enlightenment, and it is through these enlightenments that they learned about cultivation. Seriously? Divination from the heavens? That sounds like complete nonsense, Ren Xia scoffed, shaking her head. They're clearly hiding the truth behind some fancy story. Kulas shrugged. Honestly, as absurd as it sounds, I kind of believe it. How else would they have discovered so much? What do you think? Both of them turned to Tianyang. It does sound like nonsense at first, he admitted. However, I've witnessed things far more unbelievable, so it doesn't sound entirely impossible to me. Really? Like what? Ren Xia asked with a weird face. He shook his head, his tone apologetic. It concerns the forbidden information within Han Zexian's tomb, so I cannot speak of it. Oh, more unbelievable than the Enlightened One. Kulas replied with a smile. Now I'm really curious. Chapter 2284. The Discovery of Celestial Qi. And although the discovery of celestial qi had shaken the cultivation world and dominated every conversation for a time, the excitement gradually waned. People began to realize that it might still take thousands of years before anyone outside the 3 pillars of heaven could reach whatever lay beyond the immortal realm. Time marched on, and more than 1,000 years had passed since the discovery of celestial qi was first announced. With no further developments or reports, the world gradually lost interest to the point where many had forgotten it entirely. Moreover, there were still very few cultivators who had even stepped into the immortal realm at this point. So for the vast majority of cultivators, the realm beyond it was something far beyond their dreams. As for those in the immortal realm, they spent most of their time attempting to sense celestial chi. But without even knowing what they were searching for, the effort was no different from chasing a ghost. During these 1,000 years, Tian Yang and Ren Xia remained on Giant's continent. Tian Yang, although still stuck in the true immortal realm, has qualified to become a level 6 array master, finally reaching Luan's level. Kulis continued honing his combat experience through constant sparring with Tian Yang, and once he reached a level he deemed satisfactory, he shifted his focus entirely to developing the Giant's continent and expanding the Giant race's influence beyond its borders. After 1,000 years, Kulis' influence has surpassed even the immortal clans during their peak and has begun attracting the attention of other powerhouses, such as the Three Pillars of Heaven. Meanwhile, Ren Xia caught up with their cultivation by reaching the true immortal realm. Afterwards, she took a break from alchemy to devote herself entirely to cultivation, harboring the faint hope of becoming the first to sense celestial chi and ascend beyond the immortal realm. Of course, she knew the ambition was foolish, especially given how late she'd reached true immortal, but she still wanted to try. However, a few more 1,000 years passed with no progress related to celestial chi. By now, even immortal cultivators had given up entirely, convinced that celestial chi had been nothing more than a hoax. And while the main cultivation world was bottlenecked, the rest of the world continued to advance swiftly, with new formations and pill recipes appearing almost every week. It's been 5,000 years since the discovery of celestial chi, and the Three Pillars of Heaven haven't said a single word about it since. "Are we sure they're not just playing us?" Ren Xia asked. She had long since lost most of her hope and couldn't help feeling skeptical. "It's been 5,000 years since the discovery of celestial chi, and the Three Pillars of Heaven haven't said a single word about it since. Are we sure they're not just playing us?" Ren Xia asked. She had long since lost most of her hope and couldn't help feeling skeptical. "I cannot imagine why they would fabricate such a lie," Kulis replied, still placing faith in them. "Doing so would destroy their reputation and their credibility would plummet to rock bottom." He went on, "Be patient. 5,000 years is insignificant to cultivators like us. Each realm takes longer to advance than the last. Frankly, it wouldn't surprise me if no one breaks through to the next realm for another 50,000 years, much less just 5 a few more years later." Tian Yang started to create his own world. "Before you even create your world, you must decide where you want to put it," Luan said to him. "Where I want to put it, huh?" Tian Yang pondered for some time, but couldn't think of anything. "You got any suggestions?" He turned to ask Ren Xia. "Can't we just put it somewhere around here?" she casually replied. However, Luan shook his head. "Since there's already a personal world within the palace, it would be wiser to establish yours elsewhere. Creating 2 worlds in close proximity carries unnecessary risks." "Oh, what kind of danger are we talking about?" Tian Yang asked. "To be frank, we aren't certain," Luan replied. "It's purely conjecture for now, but caution is preferable to regret, especially considering how expensive creating worlds is. Nobody wants to waste their resources after all." "Makes sense, but what if we accidentally choose a location that's already near another world without realizing it?" In response to Tian Yang's hypothetical question, Luan could only offer a silent shrug. "So, what do you intend to do? Will you leave to create your world?" Kulis asked. Tian Yang nodded. "I haven't stepped outside this continent in over 5 millennia. It's about time I got some exercise. Still, I plan to return once my world is established." "Is that so?" Kulis muttered before looking at Ren Xia. "What about you? Isn't it obvious that I'm going to follow him?" she immediately replied. "I suppose so," Kulis said with a smile. "All right then, good luck. I'll keep your room ready for you, even if it takes 100 years. 100 years? I highly doubt it'll take that long," said Tian Yang. That said, we might travel the world a little before returning. Take as long as you need. There's no need to rush. A few days later, Tian Yang and Ren Xia left the giant's continent for the first time in over 5,000 years. Together, they wandered the divine heavens in search of a suitable place to create their own world. They assumed the search wouldn't take long, but it proved far more difficult than expected. Even after a decade, they still couldn't find a suitable location. However, they didn't give up. They continued wandering the world, and creating their own world gradually became a secondary priority. 50 years into their journey, a new rumor began to spread around the world, and it was related to celestial qi. Did you hear? The Three Pillars of Heaven claims that someone in their family has successfully sensed celestial qi for the first time after its initial discovery 5,000 years ago. Does this mean we might soon learn what lies beyond the true immortal realm? Hard to say. A mortal may sense spiritual energy, but that doesn't mean they can instantly draw it in and cultivate. They still require the appropriate technique. And even if the Three Pillars of Heaven already have the technique, it will still take time. And just like that, celestial qi became a hot topic in the cultivation world again. Chapter 2285, Sensing Celestial Qi. After 70 years had passed since Tian Yang and Ren Xia left Giant's Continent in search of a place to create their own world, they returned to the Giant's Continent as promised. Since you're back, it must mean that you've created your own world. Kulas greeted them with a wide smile. Where did you establish your world? He then asked. That, a secret just for the two of us. Ren Xia interrupted before Tian Yang could even fully open his mouth. Kulas shrugged lightly. I don't particularly care where you choose to set up your love nest, but I must admit I expected you to return with at least a child or two. What? Ren Xia looked at him in disbelief. My family has tripled in size since your initial visit, Kulas continued, and over the past 70 years I have gained 5 more sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, you don't have a single child even after 5,000 years. After a brief silence, Kulas asked with a solemn face, Ren Xie, are you infertile? Ren Xie trembled with anger at his outrageous assumption and snapped, There is nothing wrong with me, and I am definitely not infertile. We don't have any children because neither of us cares to have one. Kulas blinked in surprise, then turned to Tian Yang. For real? You don't want kids? Tian Yang silently nodded with a stiff smile. Kulas turned back to Ren Xia. And what about you? I find it hard to believe there are women out there who don't want children. What's so great about having children, anyway? Ren Xia retorted. Not only would we have to take care of them, but I'd also have to share my dear's love with them. Unbelievable. Kulas muttered, looking utterly dumbfounded. Who are you to judge us? Ren Xia shot back. If anything, we should be judging you for having so many children. Do you even remember all their names? Of course, Kulas replied with a confident nod, though due to my position I have to admit I don't exactly have the time to get to know them. I'm curious, Tian Yang suddenly said. What do you intend to do with so many children? Well, someone has to inherit my throne one day, not to mention my legacy, and you need over 300 children for that. You could do that with just one, Ren Xie retorted. That's true, but I'm an emperor. What kind of emperor has only a single child? And besides, there's no guarantee my first children will be qualified to inherit my legacy. Kulas said with a smile. Anyway, let's put this topic behind us. Have you heard the Three Pillars of Heaven's latest announcement? By latest, you mean what they claimed 20 years ago? Tian Yang asked. Kulas nodded, that they have managed to sense celestial qi. What about it? Truth is, I have also managed to sense celestial qi, Kulas revealed with a prideful smile. What? Is that true? Ren Xia exclaimed. Tian Yang then asked, when did this happen? Only a year ago, he revealed. Jealous? Want me to help you sense celestial qi? Kulas teased. Can you really do that? Tian Yang asked. I haven't tried it before, so I can't say for certain, Kulas admitted, but it should be no different from helping a new cultivator sense spiritual energy for the first time. Then, are you close to a breakthrough? Ren Xia asked. Kula's laughed. Of course not. Sensing celestial qi is one thing, but I still lack any real understanding of it. Forget cultivating it. I need to comprehend it first. Makes sense. So any idea how long it'll take for you to figure it out? Kulis shrugged. Not a clue, honestly. I don't even know if I can comprehend it. It's hard to put into words, but once you sense it yourself, you'll get what I mean. For you to say something like that. Tianyang swallowed nervously. If even someone like Kulis lacked the confidence to comprehend celestial qi, then what chance did he have? Don't give up before you even start, said Kulis after noticing his expression. Find me next week. I'll help you sense celestial qi first. All right. Tianyang and Ren Xia returned to their old room shortly afterward. Just as Kulis had promised, he had kept the place spotless and free of dust for their return. To think we stayed here for 5,000 years without a single advancement. Yet the moment we leave, so many developments occur in such a short span. Is the world trying to tell us something? Tianyang wondered aloud as he reclined on the bed. Ren Xia curled up beside him and let out a small laugh. In that case, should we leave for another 100 years then? And do what? After a moment of silence, Ren Xia responded, Dear, are you sure you don't want any children? If you're trying to be considerate, Tianyang replied with a slight smile. Are you asking me? Or are you talking to yourself? She sighed. Honestly, I'm not so sure anymore. Is it really that strange for a woman not to want children? Then take all the time you need to think it over, Tianyang said softly. I'm certain I don't want any, but if you truly do, I wouldn't mind having one with you. If you say so, a week later, Tianyang went to find Kulis. Anything I should know before we begin? Tianyang asked as he sat on the ground of the throne room. I don't think so. Then let's begin. Kulis seated himself behind Tianyang and placed his palms on his back. I will now attempt to sense celestial qi while sharing my senses with you. Whether you can also sense it will be entirely up to you, Kulis said as he closed his eyes. Whenever you're ready. I'm ready, Tianyang said. The very next moment, Kulis took a deep breath and began sharing his senses with Tianyang. Chapter 2286, Sensing Celestial Qi, Tun. Once he confirmed that his senses were properly linked with Tianyang's, Kulis began attempting to sense celestial qi. However, even though he had managed to sense it before, it wasn't something he could replicate immediately. When he first successfully sensed celestial qi, it took him nearly 10 years of straight cultivation. Fortunately, he has gotten a lot better these days, and the last time it only took him a month. Days passed in the blink of an eye, yet Tianyang still couldn't sense anything different. Kulis hadn't sensed it either, of course, but Tianyang didn't know that, and speaking might disrupt their concentration, so he stayed silent. A little over a month later, Kulis finally began to sense the celestial qi around them. However, he stayed silent, allowing Tianyang the chance to perceive it on his own. Tianyang, not knowing when or if he would sense anything, maintained his focus throughout the entire month. He could tell that something had changed through Kulis's senses, yet he still couldn't grasp it clearly himself. This feels just like when I was inside Han Zexian's cavern, Tianyang thought to himself, recognizing a familiar sensation in the struggle to comprehend the unknown. Naturally, this was nothing like attempting to comprehend the forbidden knowledge that devoured his longevity. Compared to that ordeal, his current situation was considerably more comfortable. Minutes turned into hours, and hours into days. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed, yet Tianyang still made no progress. After yet another month, Kulis opened his eyes and said, All right, that's enough for me. I can only stay in this state for so long before I'm mentally exhausted. Tianyang opened his eyes as well and let out a defeated sigh. I wasn't able to sense it, or rather I sensed something yet couldn't grasp it at all. Sorry for wasting your time. Kulis let out a hearty laugh. Did you truly expect to sense celestial qi so quickly? I certainly didn't think you would succeed on the first attempt. You may excel in comprehension, but celestial qi is something else altogether. It will be an obstacle even you will struggle with. Also, while I may be helping you sense celestial qi, I'm also improving my own comprehension, so it's not like I'm wasting any time. How often will we do this? Tian Yang then asked, if every session takes around 3 months, we can do it 2 times a year. Once a year is fine if you want to take it slower. Let's do it twice a year then. Very well. Although he would only attempt to sense celestial qi with Kulas's assistance twice a year, Tian Yang continued to practice on his own whenever he had the time. Any progress? Ren Xia asked Tian Yang after he returned from his 10th attempt to sense celestial qi. Nope, 100 attempts later. Any progress? Tian Yang could only silently shake his head. In the end, it took Tian Yang over 1,000 attempts and 250 years to finally sense celestial qi, albeit only a glimpse. I can sense it! I can sense celestial qi! Tian Yang exclaimed with excitement the moment he sensed it. It had been a long time since he experienced such excitement, and it made him feel like a child again. Good! Now this is where the true trial begins, Kulas remarked with a smile. Right, Tian Yang's excitement quickly died down after he remembered that it would take more than just sensing celestial qi to reach the next cultivation realm. How's your progress? Tian Yang then asked. As slow as a snail, Kulas shook his head. While Tian Yang had at last succeeded in sensing celestial qi, Kulas had shown almost no improvement, and his progress was barely any different from what it had been 250 years earlier when Tian Yang first started. At this rate, we probably won't see what's beyond the immortal realm for several more thousand years, Kulas sighed. That's a generous estimate, said Tian Yang. Not only do we need to fully comprehend it, but we also need the proper technique to cultivate it. I have a feeling that we won't see any real progress for at least tens of thousands of years. Kulas replied, It sucks, but what can we do about it? With that said, it's not like it's a race, at least not for me, so I will be taking things nice and slowly. Now that he's managed to sense celestial qi, Tian Yang decided to continue cultivating to make sure it wasn't a fluke. A year later, Tian Yang returned to Ren Xia with the results, seeing how it took you much longer to return this time. I guess you've finally managed to sense celestial qi, Ren Xia said, reading him like an open book. He nodded. Now that I can sense celestial qi, I can help you sense it too. However, Ren Xia shook her head. Thanks for the offer, but I want to try sensing it myself. Why? Tian Yang asked, genuinely puzzled. Because of my pride, she replied calmly. I still don't understand. Ren Xia took a breath before elaborating. Kulas managed to sense celestial qi on his own. I don't want to lose to him, so I'm going to do it myself. Of course, I'm not belittling your achievement. This is just my own stubborn pride. Moreover, it's not like I have anything else to do, if that's what you really want to do. Tian Yang nodded. If you ever change your mind, I'll be here. Ren Xia chuckled and said, Who knows? Maybe I will even surpass you. He smiled and said, If you can truly comprehend celestial qi by yourself, then that is only a given. Hell, if it weren't for the heaven-defying ascension pill, you would have already surpassed me in cultivation. Then how about a wager? Ren Xia suddenly said. Let's bet on whether I can sense celestial qi within 5,000 years. What are we betting on? If I win, you must listen to one of my demands. If I lose, I'll listen to one of yours, she said. That's it? Tian Yang raised his eyebrows. If there's something you want from me, you can just ask me, you know. I know, but I cannot think of anything else, I guess. Then I'm going to start now. Ren Xia wasted no time and immediately started her cultivation session. I should probably set a goal for myself, too. Tian Yang thought to himself as his gaze lingered on Ren Xia for a minute before he also started his own cultivation. Now that he could sense celestial qi, Tian Yang found himself spending more and more time in cultivation. At his current cultivation level, time moved beyond recognition, especially when cultivating, and what he perceived as minutes often slipped into years without him noticing. 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 4,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. Although so much time had passed, little had changed in the cultivation world. However, more and more cultivators were now reaching the true immortal realm and had begun attempting to sense celestial chi. Then another 700 years passed. Dear, I've done it. Tian Yang was in the middle of cultivation when he suddenly heard Ren Xie's excited voice coming from the room beside his. When he opened his eyes, he could see her standing outside his open room with an exhilarated smile on her face. I can sense celestial chi, she declared with a proud smile. Oh, how long has it been? He asked. 4,752 years, she immediately answered. To be honest, I was close to giving up, she suddenly continued. However, in the end, I had an enlightenment. An enlightenment? How did it feel? Tianyang asked, his interest piqued. Ren Xie closed her eyes to recall the feeling and replied, It's hard to explain. One moment I couldn't sense anything, and the next I could suddenly feel celestial chi as if it had always been there. She paused for a moment before adding, To be honest, it feels unreal. I can sense celestial chi, yet it doesn't feel like something I accomplished. It feels as though it was given to me. What are you talking about? It's definitely your own achievement. Or what are you saying that heaven took pity on you and directly helped you, like the enlightened one from the 3 pillars of heaven? If you put it like that, Ren Xia muttered with a stiff smile. Anyway, this means I won the bet. Bet? Tianyang wore a puzzled face. Don't tell me you forgot. Tianyang's expression froze for a moment before he suddenly recalled the bet. I remember now. Sorry, I actually forgot about it, he said. So what do you want me to do for you? I'll let you know once I think of something, she replied quickly. You had almost 5,000 years to think. Nonsense, she shot back. I was completely focused on my goal. I didn't have any room left to think about anything else. If you say so, and you? How close are you to understanding celestial chi? She then asked. Tianyang offered a faint, bitter smile. There were moments when I thought I was close, but the deeper I delve, the clearer it becomes that I've only touched the surface. I see. What about Kulas? Actually, I haven't seen or spoken to him in a while now, he admitted. Then let's go see him now. I can't wait to gloat, Ren Xie chuckled. All right, he nodded. Chapter 2287, Mood Swings. Shortly after Ren Xie emerged from her successful seclusion, she and Tian Yang went to find Kulas. However, when they arrived at the throne room, they were met with an unfamiliar sight. The usually unobstructed entrance was now guarded by 2 figures standing watch outside. Guards? Did something happen? Tian Yang wondered out loud as they approached the room. They have been living at the palace for thousands of years at this point, but this is the first time they've seen guards outside the room. When the guards noticed Tian Yang and Ren Xia, they immediately bowed and said, We greet Senior Tian and Senior Ren. Hey, we're here to speak with Kulas. He's inside, right? The guards nodded, but they continued to say, Yes, but we cannot let you inside without the giant emperor's approval. What kind of absurdity is this? Ren Xia said sharply. We've walked in and out of this place freely for thousands of years. What changed? The guard offered an apologetic smile. I'm aware, but these are His Majesty's orders. He expressly commanded us to prevent the 2 of you from entering without his consent. He mentioned us directly. Tian Yang had a bad feeling about their situation, and he quickly said, Then can you let Kulas know that we're here? Of course. One of the guards retrieved a communication jade slip and spoke into it. Moments later, the guard returned and relayed Kulas's response. His Majesty says he's currently occupied and will meet with you next month. Next month? Tian Yang raised an eyebrow. Though a month was nothing to cultivators at their level, it still felt strange. Kulas had never made them wait before, and had always prioritized them no matter how busy he was. All right, we'll come back later. However, Tian Yang didn't linger and quickly left with Ren Xia. Something feels off, he remarked as they returned to their room. And it's not just the situation with Kulas. The atmosphere in this place feels different. When was the last time you left this room? Ranjia asked him. About 200 years ago, so a lot could have happened. So what? Are we just going to wait? She then asked. It's only a month, however. I can talk to someone else. You mean Chao Shoying? Or C.A. Mei. The following day they went to look for Chao Shoying. However, they soon learned that she was no longer staying in the palace, having moved instead to the newly established alchemy school on the Giant's continent. I forgot they created a school for alchemists 500 years ago after the success of their school for array master Tian Yang remarked. Since these places were relatively small and operated more like ordinary schools, they were classified as such rather than as sects or other formal establishments. These schools accepted anyone willing to learn, regardless of background. They were also free to attend, making them immensely popular, so much so that humans would travel across great distances just to study on the continent. Over the years, the Giant's continent continued to expand, growing several times its original size. Not only that, its influence had already spread beyond the continent, and it was no longer an obscure power known to only a few. In recent times, the giant race had begun appearing outside their continent, albeit only within nearby regions. Though they continued to draw attention and disdain, it wasn't as intense as before. Not wanting to disturb Chao Shiying, Tian Yang went to find Xie Mei instead. He quickly found her at the training ground. Senior Tian, it's been a while. Xie Mei greeted him with a bright smile. He nodded. Indeed, it has. What brings you here? She asked, eyes gleaming. Don't tell me you came to see me. If so, this would be the first time you're the one seeking me out. It has always been Xie Mei who approached him in the past, never the other way around. Yes, I have a few questions. The smile on Xie Mei's face faded, and she asked, Have you spoken to my father yet? Tian Yang shook his head. He's busy, so I won't be able to see him for another month. I see. So you're here to ask me about my father's situation. Did something happen to him? Xie Mei scratched her head and sighed. Something did happen, but it isn't for me to tell you. If you want to know, you will have to hear it from my father. Tian Yang fell silent for a moment before asking with a slight frown. Is it really that serious? Honestly, not really. Tian Yang was left dumbfounded. How could it not be serious when everything pointed to the opposite? Seeing his reaction, C.A. Mei shrugged. You'll know once you speak with my father. Since it was only a month, Tian Yang decided to wait it out. Time seemed to pass far more slowly than usual for him, but eventually the month came to an end, and he was finally granted an audience with Kulas. Tian Yang and Ren Xie followed the guard, who informed them that Kulas was waiting. Upon entering the throne room, they found Kulas seated on his throne, a perplexed expression on his face. What's going on? Did something happen while we were in seclusion? Tian Yang went straight to the point and asked. Kulas didn't immediately respond after a long minute of silence. He eventually let out a deep sigh. Honestly, I'm still contemplating whether I should even tell you, since it's a little embarrassing. Embarrassing? Tian Yang raised his eyebrows, looking confused. Stop beating around the bush and tell us already, Ren Xie said, sounding annoyed. Kulas sighed once more before nodding, a defeated look crossing his face. I've been experiencing random mood swings that I cannot control lately, mostly anger. I thought I had completely moved past my old scars, but it seems my mental instability is slowly returning. He revealed Chapter 2288, Mood Swings. 2, Kulas continued, his voice heavy. Because of these mood swings, my family has started avoiding me. They try to hide it, of course, but it's obvious to me. Wait, mood swings? That's it? Ren Xia said, staring at him in disbelief. Are you certain this isn't simply stress? Kulas nodded and elaborated. The mood swings came out of nowhere and have only been growing more frequent. Not only can I no longer control them, but I'm starting to lose awareness altogether. I don't even realize it's happening until it's already over. There's no way stress would cause this. Tian Yang then said, I agree that this doesn't resemble stress. However, that doesn't necessarily mean your mental instability has returned. You've been stable for thousands of years. Why would you suddenly regress? Was there some kind of trigger? Kulas pondered his question for a moment before shaking his head. No, not that I can think of any. Then there must be another explanation. Have you seen a doctor yet? Renshaya asked. That was the first thing I did when it started happening. I saw several of them too. However, they were unable to find anything wrong with me. If I'm not ill and it isn't stress, then there is only one explanation remaining. My mind, Kulas sighed. Despite our strong physiques and resilient mental fortitude, cultivators are not immune to mental damage. In fact, we are often more susceptible to it. What about a heart demon? Tianyang asked. It's one of the most common issues cultivators face. What if a part of your mind still believes you're trapped in the immortal clan's dungeon? I don't possess any heart demons. I've already taken the demonic manifestation pill, a medicine designed to forcibly expose them, and it produced no response. Anyway, regardless of the cause, the reality remains that I'm causing trouble for my family, Kulas said thankfully. You haven't seen my mood swings yet, and I intend to keep it that way. How do you intend to do that? These mood swings are random, right? Are you only going to meet us after you've had one? And how bad are these mood swings? Tianyang bombarded him with questions. From what I've heard, the mood swings aren't severe, Kulas explained, but they're unsightly. As for how I plan to make sure you don't witness them, I don't know yet. I'll think of something. Until then, it's best we limit our interactions. Tianyang narrowed his eyes. Are you saying that because you don't want to trouble us? Of course. What else would it be? And yet that's exactly what you're doing, Tianyang replied calmly. Avoiding us isn't a solution, even if you believe it's unbecoming. Distancing yourself won't fix anything. You're simply running from the problem when we should be addressing it together. What do you think sworn brothers are for? That, Kulas was left speechless by his words. Tianyang continued a moment later, If you get it, let us help you. A warm smile appeared on Kulas' face. Thanks. Some time later, Kulas asked. By the way, why did you want to see me? Rensia smiled and replied. I wanted to gloat about what? That I have managed to sense celestial chi all by myself, she revealed with a prideful look on her face. Kulas offered no reply, only staring at her in stunned silence, his eyes widened and his mouth slightly open. After a moment of silence, he shifted his gaze to Tianyang and asked, Is she telling the truth? You didn't help her at all? Tianyang nodded with a smile. Yes, she's telling the truth. I offered to help her, but she refused. And it took me less than 5,000 years, she added. Now watch me enter the next realm before either of you will. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Kulas shook his head. They continued chatting for a little longer before Kulas brought up a new topic. By the way, this may sound random, but I have been wanting to do this for a very long time. After taking a deep breath, he continued, I'm going to host a tournament on this continent. A tournament? Tianyang raised his eyebrows at this news. Kulas confirmed with a nod. The participants will only be allowed to use their physique and techniques limited to strengthening their bodies, so there will be no weapons or martial techniques allowed. I'm going to call it the Tournament of Strength. Why are you suddenly hosting a tournament? Tianyang asked, puzzled by his intentions. Although anybody can participate, the giants will likely dominate it since we inherently have a superior physique. As for the purpose, I want to showcase the power of giants to the rest of the world. Oh, I also want to see if there are any excellent warriors out there for my children. When are you going to host it? I don't have an exact date, but I have already begun the preparations, maybe around 50 years from now. I see. I'm looking forward to it. You're participating, right? Kulas suddenly asked with expectant eyes. What, me? Tianyang almost couldn't believe his ears. You want me to participate in a tournament with my cultivation? You won't be using your cultivation, though. It doesn't change the fact that I'll likely be competing with people with far less experience. Kulas chuckled and said, You don't have to give me an answer right now. Just think about it for now. I'll ask you again once I have all of the details ready. Whatever. A year later, Kulas officially announced the Tournament of Strength. It instantly became a sensation across the giant's continent and even drew the attention of those beyond its borders. Especially after word of the tournament's rewards spread. The tournament was scheduled to take place in 50 years, but people were already heading to Giant's Continent, mere days after it was announced. In the years that followed, the Giant's Continent became more crowded with visitors than ever before, including unexpected visitors from the Holy Continent. Chapter 2289, A Faint Presence. Hey, brother, are you sure you don't want to participate in the Tournament of Strength? Kulas asked Tian Yang as the tournament day drew closer. How many times do I have to decline before you get it? Tian Yang sighed. But don't you want to show off your skills to the world? Why the hell would I care about something like that? And it's not like the world isn't aware of me already. Have you forgotten who brought the downfall of the immortal clans? Tian Yang's war against the immortal clans had once made his name infamous across the divine heavens. However, with thousands of years having passed, his name, though not forgotten, was rarely mentioned anymore. Also, I am technically a criminal, you know, Tian Yang said with a slight smile. Kulas laughed out loud and said, Who dare hunt the man who pretty much single-handedly defeated the immortal clans? If anyone were to go after you, it'd be the 3 pillars of heaven. But seeing how they've ignored you, you don't have to worry about such a thing. After a moment of silence, Tian Yang spoke. Now that you mentioned it, why didn't the 3 pillars of heaven do anything? They basically allowed the immortal clans to fall. If the 3 pillars of heaven had intervened with his revenge, the immortal clans would have likely still been as powerful as before. The 3 pillars of heaven are not babysitters, nor do they have any reason to help the immortal clans. While they may have been on friendly terms, it's not like they were actual friends with each other. Kulas paused briefly before continuing. Speaking of the 3 pillars of heaven, I received some interesting information about them yesterday. It appears that some of their people will be present at the tournament. Tian Yang raised his eyebrows at this news. The 3 pillars of heaven will be participating in the tournament, he asked with a dumbfounded face. No, they won't be participating. They will only be spectating. I doubt they'll only be here to spectate. Kulas nodded. I'm sure they have business with me, but we know too little about them to make any speculations. Anyway, if you're not going to participate, what are you going to do, just spectate? Tian Yang nodded. What a pity. The champion of the tournament will get to fight me too. You make it sound like we haven't fought each other thousands of times by now. And I'm sure you wouldn't want to lose before so many people in public. Kulas chuckled. Now that you've mentioned it, we haven't sparred in a few hundred years, and I still haven't beaten you yet. If you want to fight, we can do it after the tournament. Sounds good. Kulas nodded. Tian Yang then said, By the way, how have you been feeling lately? I haven't seen any mood swings since you mentioned it nearly 50 years ago. I'm actually confused myself. I'd have mood swings several times a year, but after I spoke to you, it hasn't happened once. If I had known it would be like this, I would have told you soon. Regardless, this is a good thing, of course. Kulas agreed with a smile as time passed, and the tournament day drew closer. More and more people flocked to the Giant's Continent. Cultivators of great power and members of influential families alike arrived in droves, all eager to witness the prowess of the giant race firsthand. Although rumors circulated that members of the 3 pillars of heaven might appear, no one knew their identities, or if they would truly show up, leaving the crowds to speculate. It's been a while since I left the palace, so I'm going to leave for a bit, Tian Yang said as he approached the door. Where are you going? I'll go with you, Ren Xia said. However, Tian Yang shook his head and said, Sorry, but I want to go alone. I have been wanting to visit this place ever since I returned to this continent, but I never found the courage to do so. Ren Xia realized where Tian Yang wanted to go and calmly nodded. All right. I won't bother you then. Thanks. After leaving the palace, Tian Yang made his way to the place where he had first met Kulas and where he had lost Huang Shaoli. Yet the continent had changed beyond recognition. Its land expanded many times over. It took him considerable time to find the location, and when he finally stood there, It bore no resemblance to his memories. Given the thousands of years that had passed, that was only natural. After standing motionless for many hours, Tian Yang finally reached into his pocket and retrieved a spatial ring. If reincarnation is real, are you somewhere in this vast world right now, living a vastly different life? Are you living a happy life? Would I even be able to recognize you? He muttered. Some time later, he put away the spatial ring and began walking a certain path. Eventually, he reached an empty stretch of land. Once the entrance to Han Zexian's tomb, it was now utterly barren, with no sign that the tomb had ever existed. According to what he'd heard from Ren Xia, the immortal clans had taken full control of Han Zexian's tomb after he entered the cavern. However, they soon realized that the trials no longer functioned, reducing the tomb to nothing more than an empty world. After he escaped from the tomb, the immortal clans were forced to abandon the tomb as well, because it started to collapse on itself. Kulas told me that he'd tried to find Han Zexian's tomb again, but to no avail. Tian Yang's thoughts were abruptly interrupted when he sensed a faint presence approaching from behind. He turned around and his eyes widened in shock and disbelief. It was someone he recognized. Not only did he recognize them, but despite the thousands of years that had passed, they hadn't changed in the slightest. However, before Tian Yang could snap out of his daze, the individual spoke first. Tian Yang? Elder Son, he responded. Chapter 2290, Reunion with Elder Son. The person standing before Tian Yang was none other than Elder Son, and she looked exactly as she had the last time he saw her, thousands of years ago, almost as though she hadn't aged a single second. Elder Son was a beautiful young woman with short black hair that barely brushed her shoulders, clear amber-colored eyes, a slender physique, and a rather ordinary stature. She wasn't the kind of breathtaking beauty that drew instant attention, yet there was a subtle aura about her, one that made her seem more beautiful the longer one looked. Tian Yang, is that really you? Elder Son said softly, blinking as if she couldn't quite believe her eyes. Unlike herself, Tian Yang had changed tremendously since the last time she'd seen him. He had grown taller, more mature, and, of course, more handsome. He was no longer the young man who had always worried her, yet, despite his transformation, Elder Son recognized him almost immediately. Elder Son, so you were alive? Tian Yang spoke with a relieved smile on his face. Why would I be dead? She frowned slightly. Didn't you hear about what happened to the immortal monastery? Tian Yang asked quickly. They were dragged into my conflict with the immortal clans? Thousands of disciples died, and when I couldn't find you, I assumed you were dead. He paused, then asked, Where have you been? Why weren't you at the sect? Elder Son sighed and replied, I left the sect long before that happened. As for where I went, I returned to my hometown. Tian Yang narrowed his eyes slightly before asking, Would that happen to be the Holy Continent? Her eyes widened with surprise. How did you know? Her reaction confirmed Tian Yang's suspicions. Elder Son was undeniably from the Sun family of the three pillars of heaven. I overheard you speaking with another elder. I forgot her name, but I always see the two of you together. You mean Elder Jing? Tian Yang nodded. And if you're from the Holy Continent, do you also belong to the Sun family, one of the three pillars of heaven? He continued to ask. Elder Son didn't immediately respond. After a moment of silence, a slight smile tugged on her lips, and she spoke. To find out so much about me, even though I've never told you anything, you must have spent a lot of time investigating me. Do you have a crush on me or something? Don't flatter yourself, Elder Son. I merely placed pieces of a puzzle together after learning of them by chance. Elder Son frowned, clearly displeased with his response, and said, You can stop calling me Elder Son. I lost the qualifications when I left the sect. Then what should I call you, now that I think about it? I don't even know your full name. My name is Rushi Sun Rushi, but I forbid you from using my given name. If I cannot call you Elder Son or use your given name, what am I supposed to call you? Sister son? Senior sister? Tianyang said with a smile. Well, you were always more like an elder sister to me than anything. An elder sister? She sneered. I thought you no longer wanted anything to do with me. Or have you forgotten about what you said to me when we last met? Tianyang's expression stiffened when she brought up his previous outburst, that he had already severed their relationship. That's... Tianyang opened his mouth slightly, only to close it again. After a brief silence, he lowered his body and bowed to her. This may sound like an excuse, but I was overwhelmed by emotion back then, and wasn't thinking clearly. I've regretted not being able to apologize to you ever since. He paused, then said softly, I'm sorry. Truly, Ahem. Sun Rusi cleared her throat, covering her mouth with a fist as she tried to hide the faint smile tugging at her lips. Well, you were young and stupid back then, so I am willing to forgive you. Tianyang raised an eyebrow and asked, Speaking of age, how old are you exactly? You haven't changed even slightly since I last saw you, and you're even at the true immortal realm now. No, you were probably already an immortal back then and were merely suppressing your cultivation. It's rude to ask a woman her age, she said with a faint smile. But if you're imagining me as some ancient monster, you're mistaken. I'm at most 100 years older than you. At our level, that's hardly worth mentioning. And no, I wasn't suppressing my cultivation back then. What you saw was my real cultivation, so you've managed to reach true immortal since then? That's quite impressive. Who do you think you're talking to? If a talentless brat like you can reach true immortal in a few thousand years, why can't I? I'm a member of the 3 pillars of heaven, pioneers of cultivation, you know? Honestly, besides that they discovered cultivation, I don't know much, if anything, about the 3 pillars of heaven. In fact, I didn't even know about their existence until recently. There isn't much to know, she said. We're no different from other families, just a bit larger and more secluded. That sounds like an understatement. If you're that curious, why don't you come to the Holy Continent and see for yourself? Sun Rusi suddenly said. What? Tianyang looked at her with a surprised face. But from what I've been told, the Holy Continent is a special place that most cannot enter. That's true, but I can give you permission. Is it really that simple? She nodded. Pretty much. I'll think about it after the tournament ends. Tianyang then said, Speaking of the tournament, are you also here to spectate the tournament? She asked. Something like that. In fact, I have been living here for the last several thousand years. This place? Why? She tilted her head slightly with a puzzled look, unable to comprehend his choice. My best friend is the Giant Emperor, and I don't have anywhere else to go, he said. Chapter 2291, Sun Rusi. You're friends with the Giant Emperor? Best friends at that? Sun Rusi wore a surprised look on her face after hearing this information. Tianyang nodded. We've known each other long before he became the Giant Emperor, though Sun Rusi suddenly fell silent with a pondering expression. A moment later, she spoke. Since you're his friend, do you think you can speak to him for me? The 3 pillars of heaven. Although we came to spectate the tournament, our main purpose here is to speak with the Giant Emperor. Tianyang shook his head and said, That won't be necessary. He is already expecting the 3 pillars of heaven to contact him. But if you don't mind me asking, what business do you have with him? However, Sun Rushi shrugged before replying. I don't know. I tagged along on my own will, so I am not part of the main group. The main group? How many from the 3 pillars of heaven are here? He asked. 6 people, excluding me, 2 from the Ji family, 2 from the Sun family, and 2 from the Tian family. I see, by the way, this may be a weird question, but what's the Tian family like? Although he claimed that he wasn't interested in his real background, Tianyang couldn't help himself. The Tian family? Sun Rusi looked at him with raised eyebrows, seemingly suspicious of his intentions. After a moment of silence, she responded, You'll need to be more specific than that. Just what do you want to know about them? If it's not too much to ask, what kind of unique prowess do they possess? What? Sun Rusi narrowed her eyes. Unique prowess, as in the power of their bloodline? Why do you want to know about something like that? I heard a certain rumor and just wanted to confirm something. Is that so? Unfortunately, I cannot disclose such sensitive information, even if that person is you. In fact, I'll likely face the death sentence if I reveal such information to an outsider. If you really want to know, you'll have to visit the Tian family and ask them yourself. Tian Yang shook his head. It's nothing more than blind curiosity. Anyway, I'll be returning to the palace soon. Want to meet the giant emperor now? You can speak with him yourself, Sun Rusi then said. Actually, I only intended to visit this place briefly. Someone is waiting for my return, so I'll visit the palace afterward. Oh, did you finally get yourself a partner after so long? Tian Yang remarked with a smile. She immediately frowned. What nonsense are you talking about? I came here with my friend, who you know as Elder Jing. Elder Jing? She also left the sect? Yes, and she has been staying at the Sun family with me. You're practically sisters now. I guess so then. Visit the palace whenever you're ready. I'll see you then. Tian Yang didn't linger and left the next moment, leaving Sun Rusi behind. She didn't immediately leave and stayed behind to watch his figure quickly disappear into the horizon. So, you had been hiding here for the last several thousand years? No wonder I couldn't find you, she mumbled in a low voice some time later. She also left, returning to where Elder Jing was waiting. Back so soon already? Elder Jing remarked when Sun Rushi returned. Yes, Elder Jing raised an eyebrow when she saw the look on Sun Rushi's face. Did something happen? The last time you showed such a smile was when you learned that Disciple was alive. Sun Rushi chuckled. You won't believe who I met just now. No way. Elder Jing stood up with a dumbfounded look on her face. Don't tell me, yes, I met him. Seriously? Sun Rusi continued. The reason we couldn't track him after the immortal clan's downfall was because he'd been living quietly on this continent for the past several thousand years. What she didn't mention to Tian Yang was that she had been keeping tabs on him all this time, much like how he had been watching over Kulis while he was still trying to conquer the continent. She was aware of nearly every move he'd made right up until the moment he vanished without a trace. This has to be fate or something, said Elder Jing. However, this begs the question, why have you returned so soon? It's been thousands of years since you last spoke with each other, right? Surely there's plenty to talk about. Like what? Sun Rushi asked with a puzzled face. Like that? Elder Jing rubbed her eyes and sighed. Isn't it obvious? Ask him about his affairs. Like what happened to that sword empress who was always by his side, about their relationship, etc., etc. Sun Rushi frowned and said, Did you hit your head recently? Why would I ask him about his personal affairs? It's none of my business. Oh, please? You don't need to pretend when you're with me. If you weren't interested in him, why did you constantly watch over him for hundreds of years? I did no such thing. You're making it sound like I was stalking him when I only had people keep me updated on his situation from time to time, so I know he's still alive. Yeah, whatever you say, Lady Sun. Elder Jing said in a teasing tone, So what are you going to do now? I'm going to have an audience with the giant emperor and set up a meeting for the others, she said. The giant emperor? I thought you had no intention of involving yourself with the main group. Tian Yang is friends with the giant emperor. In fact, he's staying with him. Elder Jing smiled and said, Ah, I see. You want an excuse to continue speaking with that disciple, huh? Knowing it would only be a waste of her breath, Sun Rusi didn't respond to her remarks, and instead asked, I only returned to let you know. Want to come with me? And interrupt your time with him? No thanks, I'll just wait for you here. Sun Rusi didn't try to convince her and left for the palace shortly after. Some time later, Sun Rusi arrived at the palace and said to the gate guard, Can you let Tian Yang know that Sun Rusi is here to see him? Senior Tian. The guards were surprised by her request since nobody had ever looked for him. However, since she knew Tian Yang was at the palace, it was likely because he told her, so they didn't question her further and notified Tian Yang. Senior Tian, someone named Sun Rushi is here to see you. A guard knocked on his door and announced. Sun Rushi, a woman? Renshia turned to look at him, eyebrows raised. She's elder Sun, the sect elder I talked about before, Tian Yang explained. I met her by chance when I went out just now. Then why is she looking for you again so soon? She's mostly here for Kulis, just as we speculated. She's from the 3 Pillars of Heaven. I see, without another word, Renshia stopped cultivating and followed Tian Yang to the door. I have been curious about this elder Sun ever since I heard about her. To think I'd get to finally meet her. Renshia spoke with a mysterious smile on her face. Tian Yang didn't think much of it and went to fetch Sun Rusi with Renshia. Once outside, Tian Yang said to her, I didn't think you'd visit so soon. If I'd known, I would have just waited for you. It's fine, she said. So you're elder Sun, huh? Renshia muttered. Sun Rusi shifted her gaze to Renshia. You must be Renshia. Oh! Renshia wore a look of surprise after being recognized. Have we met before? No, but you're quite famous. The immortal slayer and the sword empress, even infants knew your name a few thousand years ago. That's an overstatement, said Tian Yang. Anyway, I haven't had the chance to speak with the giant emperor yet, so I'll go speak with him now. You can wait in my room in the meantime. Your room, Sun Rushi murmured with a somewhat dazed face. Don't worry, it's my room too, Renshia said with a smile. Sometime later, then I'll be back. After leaving Sun Rusi in his room with Renshia, Tian Yang went to find Kulas. My husband speaks quite highly of you, elder Sun. Renshia started a conversation not even a minute after Tian Yang left. Your husband? Sun Rusi's eyebrows raised slightly at her words. Honestly, we're more like Tao companions than husband and wife since we never tied the knot. Is that so? Renshia glared at Sun Rusi, scrutinizing every subtle reaction she showed. Her reactions are weak. Not what I had anticipated at all. Renshia thought to herself. No, she's just good at hiding them. She smiled inwardly. Chapter 2292, Sun Rusi 2. You know, I have heard a lot about you from my husband, Renshia continued. Sun Rusi raised an eyebrow, her eyes flickering with intrigue. Oh, what does he say about me? He said you were always nagging at him. Renshia chuckled. That you made his life in the immortal monastery more difficult than it had to be. Sun Rusi shook her head with a bittersweet smile and replied, If I didn't nag at him, who would? He was always getting into trouble, acting recklessly and without a care for his life. So, he was like that as a disciple too, huh? I thought it was something he picked up after he left the sect. Renshia remarked with a surprised look on her face. It was a habit of his to belittle himself, calling himself talentless and whatnot. And because of his lack of talent, he would constantly push himself to the brink of death. I have lost count of how many times I had to save him. Sun Rushi glared at Renshia and asked, What do you like about that brat anyway? Aren't you a young lady of the immortal clans? Renshia chuckled and replied, It's precisely his recklessness that I love. She narrowed her eyes slightly and continued, And you? What was it about him that made you keep an eye on him? Disciples getting into trouble happens all the time, yet you specifically decided to pay special attention to him. Sun Rusi lifted her head to stare at the empty ceiling. After a moment of silence, she muttered, I wonder, what? Renshia raised an eyebrow. Sun Rusi continued with a profound smile. If you think about it, there's really nothing truly special about Tian Yang as a disciple. If you saw him in a crowd, he was just like any other disciple, completely ordinary. While his recklessness is on another level, he wasn't the only disciple desperate for improvement. I see them almost daily, however. There was just something about him that I couldn't ignore, and I am still trying to figure out the cause even to this day. That sounds like love at first sight, Renshia chuckled. What? Sun Rushi looked at her with wide eyes, almost as if she couldn't believe her ears. She then spoke. I may not understand why I was attracted to him, but I can say with certainty that it wasn't such emotions. I just got this feeling that I couldn't leave him alone. I was only joking. Ren Xia shook her head with a smile. If you don't mind me asking, why was someone like you working as a sect elder at the Immortal Monastery? You're a member of the Three Pillars of Heaven, right? With your qualifications, you could even ask to be its sect leader, let alone a sect elder. Sorry, but I cannot tell you the reason. However, I can tell you that nobody at the sect was aware of my true background, as that would have defeated my purpose for being there in the first place. So she was in a situation where she had to keep her background hidden, huh? Ren Xia thought to herself. As someone from a privileged background, she could think of several reasons why Sun Rusi had to conceal her identity. While Ren Xia and Sun Rusi continued their conversation, Tian Yang spoke with coolness. So the Three Pillars of Heaven have business with me, huh? Well, I had already anticipated something like this when I heard they would show up. Do you mind speaking with one of them right now? She's Tian Yang explained the whole situation to Kulas. What? Elder Sun. Kulas's eyes widened with surprise at the news. To think you'd meet her by chance. This is more than mere coincidence. It must be fate. All right, I'll meet with her, he agreed. Tian Yang returned to tell Sun Rusi of Kulas's approval and brought her to meet him sometime later. It's an honor to meet you, Giant Emperor. Sun Rushi politely greeted him. You can drop the formality. Kulas casually waved dismissively. You may not remember, but this is actually our second meeting. Oh, where and when did we last meet? Sun Rushi asked. Here, on this continent, right before the opening of Han Zexian's tomb, moments after you spoke with my dear friend. Then you're... Sun Rushi immediately recalled Kula's words to her on that day. Kula silently nodded in confirmation. You should have seen his face afterward. Kulas laughed out loud. It had nothing but guilt all over it. Hearing such words, Sun Rusi subconsciously shifted her gaze to Tian Yang, who was sighing as he rubbed his eyes. Anyway, why did you want to meet with me? The Three Pillars of Heaven has something they would like to discuss with you, and I wanted to see if we could schedule a meeting. Schedule a meeting? You're more reserved than I expected. I was anticipating the Three Pillars of Heaven to simply walk in here and demand an audience like they own the place. Kulas remarked with a smile. To be honest, they'll likely do that if you refuse. Kulas then said, since you're already here, why don't you tell me what the Three Pillars of Heaven want from me? Sun Rushi shook her head and explained, I may have come here with them, but I am not part of the discussion, so I don't know what business they have with you. Is that so? Then, do you mind me asking what sort of position you stand within the Three Pillars of Heaven? My position, huh? I am just one of many in the main family. It's nothing impressive. Kulas could sense that Sun Roshi wasn't giving the full details, but decided to ignore it because of her relationship with Tian Yang. Very well. If the Three Pillars of Heaven want to speak with me, we can do so after the Tournament of Strength. It's not like I can turn away the most powerful family in the world anyway. Thank you. Since you're someone close to my brother, I'll let you linger at the palace as well. Just don't wander around alone. I understand. After her audience with Kulas, Sun Rusi stayed a little longer to chat with Tian Yang. Hey, why don't we have a little spar? Sun Rusi suddenly said. Out of nowhere. Tian Yang looked at her with a weird expression. I want to see how much you've grown. Tian Yang smiled and said, Don't complain if you lose. Lose to you? When have I ever lost to you? You may be a true immortal now, but that won't change anything, if you say so. Tian Yang brought her to the training ground inside Kula's world. This is a personal world, Sun Rusi seemed to be surprised by its existence. You look surprised? Don't you have plenty of these at the Holy Continent? What? Who told you that? Sun Rusi looked at him with a puzzled face. Nobody. It was just my own speculation. What a wild speculation. Do you think it's easy to create personal worlds? It requires a tremendous amount of resources and time. Even the Three Pillars of Heaven cannot make them willy-nilly. While we do have a few, they're all used as secret vaults, not as a training ground like this. Anyway, for this spar, I won't use my family's techniques to make things fair, she then said. However, Tianyang shook his head and said, "Aren't you underestimating me a little too much? You're already going to lose, so why cripple yourself even more?" "Looks like you've gotten quite arrogant since the last time I saw you," she said. "How about this? If you can force me to use my family's martial techniques, I will owe you a favor. You know that I defeated the immortal clans, right?" Tianyang said, "Of course. Yet you're still underestimating me. You must be powerful enough to crush the immortal clans effortlessly, then." Sun Rusi quickly responded with a confident smile. "If I really wanted to, I could have dealt with them in a few days. Now I really cannot wait to fight you." Tianyang said as he beckoned her. "I'm ready whenever you are. As your senior, I'll let you make the first move," she said. "Then I won't be humble." Tianyang immediately made his move without hesitation, striking her with a lightning-quick sword technique. In response, Sun Rusi used a movement technique, easily avoiding his sword technique. Tianyang immediately followed up with another sword technique, one that Sun Rusi was very familiar with: the Immortal Monastery's sword techniques. There's more where that came from. Tianyang laughed as he continued using the Immortal Monastery's martial techniques. "You kept training their techniques even after you left. Why?" she eventually asked. "I'm sure you have acquired many powerful and high-ranking techniques." "I didn't practice them out of nostalgia or anything," he said with a smile. "For some reason, using them puts me at ease, so I do so from time to time to clear my mind or as a warm-up. Seriously, this is the first time I've heard of such a thing. What about your techniques? If they're not from the Immortal Monastery or your family, where'd you learn such techniques?" Tianyang asked her. "There is something called the heavenly knowledge within the 3 pillars of heaven. It contains countless nameless techniques created by the 3 families." "What, isn't that technically techniques from your family?" "Technically, yes, but the ones I'm using aren't created by my family, but the other 2 families, so it's fine. Also, most of these techniques are either abandoned or unfinished, hence why they're nameless," she explained. Chapter 2293, Tournament of Strength begins. Heavenly knowledge? Such a name for a place to throw away unfinished techniques. Why'd you even learn them? "And are you sure it's okay to tell me about such a place? Won't you be punished?" Tianyang questioned. Sun Rushi shrugged. "The heavenly knowledge is not a secretive place. Anyone within the 3 pillars of heaven can access it. As for why I learned them, it's a good way to practice." "Practice?" Tianyang asked, a puzzled expression on his face, trying to comprehend and complete the unfinished techniques. "Turning them into your own," she replied calmly. Although Sun Rushi made it sound like an ordinary thing, it was anything but. Completing another person's unfinished technique required tremendous talent and experience, an achievement few cultivators could ever hope to accomplish. "There's not much to do at the 3 pillars of heaven, so I spent most of my time cultivating and finishing techniques." "That's how you spent the last few thousand years?" "It's a bit boring when compared to your little adventure, isn't it? Anyway, enough chit-chat. Let's continue." Sun Rushi went on the offensive this time. Her movements were swift and graceful, like a dancer on a stage. As their spar continued, Tianyang noticed that he was starting to get pushed back by her. Even though I'm not using any of my main techniques to be pushing me back, Tianyang was truly surprised that he wasn't able to overwhelm Sun Rusi despite his vast experience. Even though I should have more experience than her, how is she this powerful? This is what true talent looks like. He finally understood that Sun Rusi hadn't been looking down on him. However, that didn't mean he would give up. "Looks like you're finally starting to fight seriously," Sun Rusi remarked as she noticed a shift in Tianyang's movements. "Yes, looks like I had been the one underestimating you this entire time," Tianyang said. "I'll be fighting seriously now, so try not to get hurt." Tianyang unleashed limitless sword domain and started using other powerful martial techniques, instantly turning the tide. "So this is the immortal slayer who caused the immortal clan's downfall." Sun Rusi smiled inwardly after experiencing the legend herself. However, as much as she wanted to enjoy the moment, she knew that she could no longer take the spar lightly. Thus, They started fighting seriously. While it wasn't at the level where they were trying to kill each other, they were fighting with the intent of defeating the other, even if it was a little dangerous. A few hours later. "You're really something, Tianyang. Not even the geniuses at the 3 Pillars of Heaven could push me this far," Sun Rusi remarked, her entire body soaked in sweat. "I could say the same. Not even Kulas could make me bleed this much," Tianyang said, his body soaked in sweat and blood. "I must admit," Sun Rusi thought to herself, "I won't be able to defeat him at this rate. However, if I lose my family's techniques, I might as well surrender." Meanwhile, Tianyang pondered how he could force her to use the Sun family's techniques. Then, after a few thousand more exchanges, Sun Rusi suddenly said, "Ha, I'm tired, I surrender." "What? Surrendering before you are forced to use your family's technique? That's cheating." Sun Rusi smiled and said, "Since I admit defeat, even though I didn't use my family's techniques, I'll owe you a favor." Well, if you admit defeat, although he won, Tianyang wasn't happy. He knew that if Sun Rushi started using her family's technique, he would definitely have lost. "I still have a long way to go, huh?" he muttered. "What?" Sun Rushi, who heard his mumble, uttered. "You're plenty strong enough already. What are you going to do with more power? Are you going to challenge the 3 Pillars of Heaven next?" Tianyang raised an eyebrow and replied, "Challenge the 3 Pillars of Heaven? I may be reckless, but I am not suicidal. Also, why would I challenge them in the first place? It's not like we have any grudges." "I guess so." Sun Rusi fell silent, her gaze fixated on him. "If you have something you want to say, just say it," Tianyang said, noticing her odd gaze. "Why did you go after the immortal clans? Is it related to why your outburst on that day?" she asked with some hesitancy in her voice. This was something she had always wanted to figure out. The reason for his hatred toward the immortal clans and why he'd said such things to her. "If you don't want to tell me, that's fine." After a moment of silence, Tianyang shook his head and said, "No, you have the right to know after what happened. It might take a while, so why don't we do it somewhere more comfortable? I also want to wash up first, okay?" They left the training ground and returned to Tianyang's room. After they both washed up, they sat down with some hot tea. "I will tell you everything from the start," Tianyang said, and he started telling Sun Rusi about everything that had occurred since he left the immortal monastery, from his meeting with the Huang family, to how they survived a mythical beast because of her life-saving treasure, and what happened on the desolate continent that led him to Han Zexian's tomb. I see ever since that incident, she had been trying to figure out the cause and what she had done wrong. Now, after thousands of years of doubt and confusion, Sun Rusi finally learned the reason behind Tianyang's anger on that day. "If I were in your shoes, I would also be angry, however. I must correct you on something," she suddenly said. "What?" Tianyang looked at her with a puzzled face. "That life-saving treasure, even if you had known about it in advance, you wouldn't have been able to save the whole family. After all, life-saving treasures are typically meant for a single person for maximum efficiency. It was already a miracle that it managed to activate for 2 people. If you had tried to use it for the whole family, it would have likely picked its target at random, leaving behind the others or not activate at all." Seriously. Tianyang swallowed nervously at her words. Sun Rushi took out the life-saving treasure she'd retrieved from Tianyang in the past and showed it to him. "If you don't believe me, you can try it." Tianyang sighed. "There's no need. I believe you. It's just that now I feel even more guilty for trying to blame you." "No point dwelling in the past," she said before suddenly narrowing her eyes at him. "But still, to think it was all because of another woman." Sun Rushi felt a little annoyed for some reason. Time continued to pass, and a few days later the Tournament of Strength officially began. The tournament was held on an artificial island near the Giant's continent. Kulas had originally planned to host it within the city, but with thousands, no, hundreds of thousands of participants registering, he made a last-minute decision to move it elsewhere. "Wow, there are a lot more people here than I anticipated," Renshia remarked after seeing the crowd that had come to spectate. "This just shows how much influence the Giants' race now has." Kula spoke with a satisfied smile. He turned to look at Tian Yang and continued, "This is your last chance to participate." "Yeah, no thanks." Kula sucked his teeth but didn't pursue it any further. "Where's Elder Sun?" Ren Xie then asked. "I thought she would be watching it with us." "She's with her family," Tian Yang said. "Is that so?" Sometime later, Kulas left his area and entered the stage. Although he didn't make a single sound when he appeared on the stage, the loud audience instantly halted their movements and stopped talking after sensing the immense pressure he exuded. "Welcome to the Giants' continent. I am Giant Emperor Kulas, the ruler of this land." After a brief introduction, he started listing the rules. Then, without any delay, immediately started the tournament. Given the sheer number of participants, the majority of whom were human, the tournament was bound to span days, perhaps even weeks. Even if the battles continued without pause, once the tournament began, multiple matches unfolded simultaneously. Kulas watched from his private viewing area with Tian Yang and Ren Xie seated beside him, a privilege not even his own children enjoyed. This arrangement drew the attention of many onlookers, especially those from powerful backgrounds. Who are those two sitting beside the giant emperor? They looked like humans. Could they be his children? Doubtful. Look at that area below him. All of his children are there. Look at the giant emperor. He's laughing with them. Unbeknownst to a few people, Tian Yang and Ren Xie were actually in disguise, so it was not surprising that nobody recognized them. However, even if they weren't disguised, it was unlikely that anybody would recognize them. Still, they didn't want any unnecessary attention, hence the disguise. "That's Tian Yang. He looks so different from my memories," Elder Jing remarked after seeing Tian Yang again. "I thought he would be more handsome." Sun Rushi smiled and said, "He's in a disguise." Really? Why?" "He did cause the immortal clan's downfall. If the three pillars of heaven aren't going after them, who else would?" "Who knows? Better be safe than sorry." Chapter 2294. After the tournament, 2 weeks had passed since the Tournament of Strength began. Despite the overwhelming number of participants, it proceeded smoothly without incident. Although the vast majority of participants were human, and more than half were eliminated, less than 1% of those disqualified were giants. This showcased the giant race's prowess to the rest of the world, just as Kulas wanted. "The giants' performance is much better than I anticipated," Kulas suddenly remarked. "What? Aren't they your people? How can you not know their capabilities?" Ren Xie questioned. "How many giants do you think exist within the continent now?" he replied. "It may have been possible back when I first started this, but nowadays it's impossible to keep track of everyone. Hell, I'm barely keeping track of my own children these days. Sounds like it's about time for you to stop making more then," Ren Xie said. "Ha ha ha ha! You think I'm making more children because I enjoy it. This is all to expand the giant race's influence. Sooner or later, we'll start expanding our influence outside the continent, and having more children will make that much easier." Kulas spoke of things that he wouldn't even tell his own children without any hesitation, almost as if he had no restrictions when it came to them. Ren Xie frowned at his words and said, "So you're going to use your children for your own political gain, as expected of someone from the immortal clans. Even if you claim to have left them behind, your nature remains the same." Despite her harsh words, Kulas wasn't offended. He knew she had always despised her family because of their arranged marriage, how they had used her for their own benefit. Of course, Ren Xie had never told him the truth. He had merely sensed that her seemingly unreasonable hostility came from somewhere, and as he grew older and more experienced, he came to understand it better. "Let's not make any assumptions," he said. "I'm not saying that I intend to sell my children for connections. I'm merely saying that without children it won't be possible to expand my family outside the continent." "Sorry," Ren Xie offered a rare apology. "Oh, look who it is," Kulas suddenly said, his eyes fixed on one of the platforms. Tian Yang and Ren Xie followed his gaze to see a familiar figure. It was none other than Xie Mei. Sure enough, Kula's children were also participating in the tournament. Of course, this wasn't an order from Kula's. They simply wanted to show off their skills and hopefully make their father proud. Jie Mei's match ended almost in the blink of an eye. Using nothing but her innate prowess, she utterly defeated her opponent with a single punch. Her opponent wasn't an ordinary cultivator either. He was clearly an experienced body refiner with his muscular physique and bulging muscles. Yet, all it took was a single punch from Jie Mei to cripple his arm. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were so fragile. Jie Mei apologized to the body refiner after destroying his entire arm. Though her words were sincere, they only angered the body refiner even further. However, the body refiner calmed down after Jie Mei gave him a pill that helped him restore his arm. Ha 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 ha, that girl is always like this. Kula's laughed after witnessing the match. I rarely see her in her giant form, said Tian Yang. Meanwhile, I've only ever seen your other children in their giant form. She's been like that for as long as I remember, said Kulas. If you want to know her reason, you should ask her later. Even I don't know. The tournament continued, and after another 2 weeks, the tournament reached its final stages. Unsurprisingly, the last few participants remaining were all giants. As for Kulas' children, they all forfeited toward the end, as they intended only to display their strength and not claim the champion. In the end, the final victory of the Tournament of Strength was a giant by the name of Grandis. As the victor, Grandis was granted the title of champion and the opportunity to fight Kulas. Not bad, young giant. Kulas leaped from the spectators' area to the platform. As the champion, I will grant you a chance to fight me. Do you accept, warrior? This humble warrior accepts, your majesty. Grandis was given a pill to recover his energy before they fought. To nobody's surprise, the fight was one-sided, lasting barely 5 minutes after the fight. It was a good fight, Warrior Grandis, Kulas said afterward. I have never accepted a disciple before, but you can be my first. What do you say? It would be an honor. Grandis accepted without hesitation, which was a no-brainer. Thus, Kulas acquired his first true disciple despite his thousands of years of experience. Although the tournament ended, many visitors lingered on the continent and continued touring the area. A week later, Sun Rusi and the 3 Pillars of Heaven arrived at the palace to fulfill their appointment. While the 6 people from the 3 Pillars of Heaven went to speak privately with Kulas, Sun Rusi and Elder Jing went to meet Tian Yang and Ren Xia. Do you remember me? Elder Jing asked Tian Yang. Much like Sun Rusi, she'd barely changed since the last time he saw her. Her cultivation had also reached Silver Immortal. Of course I do, Elder Jing. You were always beside Sister Sun. Sister Sun? Elder Jing raised her eyebrows at the way he addressed Sun Rusi. Well, I can't call her Elder Sun anymore, and she's like an elder sister to me, he explained. There's no need to call me Elder Jing either, as I am no longer a sect elder. Jing Rui is my name, but you can just call me Sister Jing. I understand. Senior Sister Jing, as Tian Yang and Jing Rui continued their conversation, reminiscing about their time in the immortal monastery for the next hour, the entire palace suddenly trembled, and an overwhelming pressure filled with killing intent swept through the halls, engulfing the place. What's going on? Jing Rui exclaimed as she jumped from her seat, startled by the immense killing intent. This aura, it belongs to Kulas, Tian Yang frowned. Chapter 2295, Kulas's Mistake. After sensing Kulas's immense killing intent that engulfed the entire palace, Tian Yang rushed out of his room and ran toward the throne room where Kulas was having his meeting with the 3 Pillars of Heaven. Hey, what's going on? Sun Rushi asked as she and the others followed behind. I would love to know too, Tian Yang said. Could it be one of his episodes? Ren Sha guessed out loud. Episodes? Jing Rui questioned. Sorry, but it's a little personal, so I cannot explain without Kulas' permission. Tian Yang apologized. Is that so? They quickly arrived at the throne room, only to find that its doors were gone, not opened or shattered, but forcibly torn away. 2 members of the 3 pillars of heaven lay unconscious on the ground, their bodies strewn amid the wreckage. Tian Yang didn't hesitate and rushed inside. The remaining members stood before Kula's, each of them grievously injured. One, however, lay motionless on the floor, his entire head crushed beyond recognition. What is the meaning of this, giant emperor? Why did you suddenly attack us? Have you gone insane? Not only did you attack us, but you even killed one of us. Are you trying to declare war against the 3 pillars of heaven? The remaining members of the 3 pillars of heaven shouted at Kulas while clutching their life-saving treasures. However, Kulas merely stood there, as if lost in a daze. Kulas! Tian Yang rushed forward, positioning himself directly between Kulas and the others. Kulas, what are you doing? This time Kulas reacted. The emptiness in his gaze faded as reason swiftly returned. What happened? He asked in a puzzled tone. That's what we should be asking, Giant Emperor. You suddenly attacked us while we were talking? What? Kula's expression sank as he realized that he'd just lost his temper again. How dare you act surprised like you weren't aware? Are you mocking us? Bastard, you killed one of our people unprovoked. I hope you're prepared for the consequences. Wait, I can explain, Kulas hastily said. There's nothing to explain. We'll be taking our leave now. The members of the 3 pillars of heaven were all between bronze and golden immortal, so there was nothing they could do before Kulas, who was a true immortal. Even if they wanted revenge, they would need to return to their family first. However, just as they turned around and prepared to leave, Tian Yang stood in their way and stopped them. Who the hell are you? Tian Yang then said. Although it won't change what had happened, allow the giant emperor to explain himself first. Are you telling us to stay here and wait for him to attack us again? How ridiculous. I will personally ensure that he won't harm another hair on your bodies. I promise, he replied. We won't listen to the words of a nobody like you. You can trust him. Sun Rushi suddenly stepped forward and said, Lady Sun, what is your relationship with this man? We're acquaintances. We listened to your excuse, but we will leave immediately afterward. One of them eventually said, now that he had a chance to clear up the confusion, Kulas explained his condition to them. However, it didn't lessen the victim's anger. If anything, it only made them angrier. So you decided to meet with us while knowing about your own instability. That's reckless and irresponsible of you, Giant Emperor. It hadn't happened in over 50 years, so I thought it was fine. Kulas sighed. I apologize for my mistake, and I'm willing to compensate for your losses. How dare you even speak of compensation? You killed one of our people. There's nothing you can do to compensate for that. Kulas had no response, so he remained silent, his expression full of guilt. Soon, Kulas' family and guards arrived at the scene as they also noticed the commotion. No longer feeling safe, the members of the 3 pillars of heaven dared not linger any longer and prepared to leave. Lady Sun, we're leaving. We must report this to the rest of the family as soon as possible. Sun Rushi wanted to stay a little longer to talk to Tian Yang more about the situation, but given the circumstances, she had no choice but to return to the Holy Continent. Once they all left, Kulas explained the situation to his family. I fucked up, he admitted with a heavy sigh. I lost my temper during our conversation, and by the time I realized I had attacked them, even killing one of them. What will happen now? One of his wives asked. Will it lead to war? Another asked. Given our current standing, it's unlikely that war will break out. However, it's not impossible, Kulas said after pondering for a moment. Now that the giant continent had become a true powerhouse, a war with the 3 pillars of heaven would undoubtedly affect the entire world and unleash unprecedented devastation. It was not something that could be taken lightly. There's nothing we can do but wait for their response. Until then, I am going to enter seclusion. Kulas suddenly declared, I must deal with this instability of mine once and for all, no matter what it takes. Unless the 3 pillars of heaven act, do not disturb me. After giving instructions to his family, Kulas turned to look at Tian Yang and said, I'm sorry because of my mistake. I have offended the 3 pillars of heaven. You should leave the giant continent for the time being, at least until things cool down. Are you really going to push us away after what happened? Tian Yang frowned. Yes, I am. Unless you know how to fix my condition, there's nothing you can do for me. I know you're angry and disappointed, but I would rather you feel that way for the rest of your life than endanger you. As much as he hated to admit it, Kulas was right. There was nothing they could do, especially when they didn't even know what was causing his mood swings. Chapter 2296, Three Pillars of Heaven's Demands. Tian Yang sighed and said, Fine. I can leave the continent if you want. However, you must give me some of your blood. I'll look for a doctor and see if we can learn more about your situation outside. I'll leave it to you. Without the slightest hesitation, Kulas handed Tian Yang a large vial of his freshly drawn blood, stunning his own family into silence. The amount he gave was greater than all the blood he had bestowed upon them collectively. Although Tian Yang had stayed in the palace for a long time, most of Kulas's children had never realized how close the two truly were, for they rarely spoke to one another. Only after witnessing this did they begin to grasp the depth of their relationship. A few of them felt the urge to voice their doubts, questioning whether Tian Yang would truly use such priceless blood to help their father or sell it for his own gain. However, they also sensed that doing so might result in enraging their father, so they held their tongues. After putting away Kula's blood, Tian Yang said to him, Promise me one thing, that you'll contact me if anything happens with the three pillars of heaven, or your condition gets worse. I promise. Kulas nodded with a smile. Tian Yang and Ren Jie didn't linger at the palace and left shortly after. Rather than waiting for a ship to return home, they decided to just fly back. I can't believe that idiot actually killed someone from the three pillars of heaven. Ren Jie sighed out loud as they traveled. It's odd. He's been fine for 50 years, but the moment he meets with people from the three pillars of heaven, his mood swings return. Is it really a coincidence? Tian Yang questioned out loud. Are you suggesting that the three pillars of heaven have something to do with his mood swings? That's impossible, given that it has been happening to him long before they even met. I guess, but I still cannot help but feel something off about the whole situation, though I might just be overthinking it. Putting that aside, what is our plan now? Ren Xia then asked. I'm going to look for the heavenly doctor and see if he could figure out anything about Kula's condition through his blood, he said. The heavenly doctor, huh? I heard he loves to wander the divine heavens and never stays in the same place for longer than a month. Finding him will be a pain in the ass, even if he moves around every day. He's our only hope right now. Thus Tian Yang and Ren Xia started their next journey. They wandered the divine heaven in search of the heavenly doctor, who was known to be able to cure any disease. Meanwhile, Sun Rushi and the others returned to the Holy Continent, where they revealed the situation to the rest of the family. Unsurprisingly, the three pillars of heaven were enraged by the news, especially the Sun family, as the only individual who died belonged to their family. The higher-ups from the three families gathered for a meeting to discuss how they should respond to Kulas' actions. Uncontrollable mood swings? What a convenient excuse. I don't believe it for 1 second, said one of the elders from the Ji family. I also don't believe it, agreed an elder from the Tian family. So, how should we deal with this situation? Do we go to war with them? Let's slow down a little. I don't think it would be wise to declare war so quickly, said the patriarch of the Tian family. The patriarch of the Ji family then spoke. I also don't recommend going to war with them. While their numbers are small, they make up for it with their overwhelming prowess. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that in the entire divine heaven, they're only below our three pillars of heaven in terms of prowess. Are you saying that we should just act like the giant emperor didn't kill one of my people? The person he killed was one of our elders, no less? The patriarch of the Sun family angrily shouted, even slamming the table with a clenched fist. We didn't say that. The giant emperor will definitely pay for attacking us unprovoked. But we must navigate this wisely, said the patriarch of the Tian family. And how the hell is sitting around a smart choice? As you said, the giant race is already near our level, and it only took them a few thousand years to reach such a level. It will only be a matter of time before they catch up to us. Do you really want to wait until then to punish them? What's to say they won't attack us?" The patriarch of the Tian family let out a heavy sigh, shaking his head. "Even if you say that, do you understand the consequences of going to war with the giant race? It would not only impact our families, but also the entire world. If powers of our stature were to collide," he paused for a second, "the devastation would be beyond imagining. We just need to overwhelm them before they can do anything. Don't tell me you're scared of them. We're the three pillars of heaven. The heavens have chosen us to lead this world. How can we be scared of a few giants?" Over the next several months, the three pillars of heaven would argue back and forth about how they should respond to the situation. In the end, the three pillars of heaven made several demands of Kula's. If he were to fulfill these demands, they would no longer pursue the issue. However, if he were to refuse, then the three pillars of heaven had no choice but to declare war against them. When Kula's heard their demands, he immediately erupted with rage. "What utter bullshit! You want me to execute 10 of my own children and one of my wives because I killed one of yours, as if I could accept these demands."